Heart of the World by H. Rider Haggard. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 19. The Sacrilige. Now Maya bent over the form of her father and took the talisman from his neck. "I feel like one who robs the dead," she said. "Remember that it is to save the living, and be comforted," answered Mattai. "Come, let us be going, for the night draws on." "Take a lamp, each of you," he said presently, when we had reached the further end of the great hall, where he unlocked the copper gates with a key from the bunch that hung at his girdle. We passed through, and turning, he almost closed the gate, but not quite. "Why do you leave the gates ajar?" I asked. "Because there are none to follow us," he answered, "and who knows what may happen. Should we be forced to fly the sanctuary, open doors are easier to pass than those that are shut." "Who or what would force us to fly the sanctuary?" I asked. Mattai shrugged his shoulders and went on without answering. Now we passed down many stairs, along passages, and through secret doors, each of which Mattai left open behind us, till at length we came to a black wall of marble. On this wall Mattai felt with his thumb till he found a spot that, being pressed, slid back, revealing a keyhole into which he inserted a small silver key. Then again he pressed upon the marble, and a panel moved that might have been 2 feet wide by 6 in height, and we saw that light streamed through the opening. Beckoning to us, he walked through the gap in the wall, and one by one we followed him into the sanctuary of the nameless God, and stood on the further side of the wall, huddled together and clasping each other's hands, for the place was awesome, and its utter silence and solemnity filled us with fear. The first thing that caught our eyes, as was natural, for it was built into the wall opposite to us, and through it streamed the light that filled the chamber, was the most wonderful and mystic effigy of the City of the Heart. The effigy was a colossal mask of singular and fearful beauty, fashioned from polished jade, and similar in design to those which are to be found in the ruins of Palenque and other deserted Indian cities, whereof no man knows the age. This huge green mask was placed above the narrow door that gave entrance to the sanctuary, and had been carved to represent the countenance of a being that, although its features were human, resembled neither man nor woman in its unearthly dignity and its stamp of cruel calm. The thick lips were carved with a contemptuous smile, and between them gleamed teeth made of white enamel, and nose was aquiline, with widespread nostrils that seemed to inhale the incense of worship, and the forehead, in whose centre appeared the impress of a woman's hand soaked in some scarlet dye, was broad, low, and retreating. Beneath the solemn and contracting brows were jewelled eyes. Through these eyes, and indeed from the entire surface of the mask, streamed light, making the face visible as though it were limned in phosphorus, for the jade was transparent as the thinnest alabaster, and behind it burned 2 great lamps that were named after the sun and moon. Such was the effigy of the nameless spirit that we now beheld for the first time, who had face but no form, the spirit, mouth of the heart, to whom every lesser god was subject, utterer of the thoughts of the heart of heaven, lord of power, dweller in the darkness behind the sun, searcher of the secrets of death. Without pity was this God of theirs, and without wrath, who, clothed in eternal calm, so these people fabled, rested in a home of darkness, watching the shadow of events, celestial and terrestrial, in his mirror of the moon, and telling of them to the heart, which was his soul. The seal of the woman's blood-stained hand was set upon his brow, because woman is a symbol of life renewed. The hand is the sign of purpose, and the strength to do it, and by blood and anguish must every purpose be accomplished. But the Nameless One executed no purpose. That was the work of lesser gods. In the beginning, the heart thought, and the mouth blew with his breath, giving life to the earth, and causing it to roll forward among the spheres. And now the eyes watched, ever smiling, while it and those upon it work out our doom, till at length its primal force grows faint and fails, when, so said the priests, heart and mouth and eyes will think and speak and search, and at their command a new world shall arise from the corpse of the old, and a new life from the lives of those who dwelt thereon. Therefore it was, though now faith waned among them with their waning energies, that this people, knowing no better creed, worshipped the threefold Fate without a name, whom they held to be master of gods and men. Therefore also, long generations since, in this spot which we came to violate, to them the most holy on earth, they set up effigies of a heart, a mouth, and eyes as symbols of his attributes. The roof of the sanctuary, which was of no great size, was vault-shaped, in imitation of the arching sky, and in it appeared a golden sun, a silver crescent moon, and the stars of heaven. Its walls were lined throughout with polished blocks of the beautiful stone known as Mexican onyx, fretted over to the height of a man, with a border of hieroglyphics and effigies of the lesser gods in attitudes of adoration, all of them cast in gold and set flush with the face of the wall. The furniture was very simple, consisting only of stools cut from rich woods, heavily gilded and quaint designs, and a small table whereon lay sheets of paper made of bark, together with brushes of reed fibre and pots of pigment, such as were used in the picture writing of this people. Lastly, at that end by which we had entered the chamber, stood an altar of black marble, written around with letters shaped in gold, and upon this altar lay something covered with a silken cloth. For a minute or more we remained silent, contemplating these wonders. Then, with a gesture of impatience, Mattai spoke in a whisper, saying, "Let that be done which we have come to do, for now the sacrilege is committed, and it is too late for doubts." Speaking thus, he stepped to the altar and lifted the silken cloth that lay over the object which was upon it, revealing the image of a human heart fashioned in bloodstone and veined with arteries of gold. In the centre of this heart appeared a small and shallow hole that had been hollowed in its substance. "This is the tradition," said Mattai, still speaking in a whisper, "that when the two halves of a certain talisman are placed in this hollow, the symbol will open and reveal that which has been set within it since it was fashioned by Cucumatz thousands of years ago. And there is this in favour of the truth of the tale, that golden hinges appear upon the sides of the symbol. Now one half of the talisman has rested here for many generations, till Zibalbay took it with him, indeed when he went out to seek for the other half, and yet the symbol has never opened. Still, I am sure that it will open when the whole talisman is set in its place. In this matter, however, there is something more to fear than the vengeance of the gods, for, as I can read well, it is written in those letters that encircle the altar. An ancient tradition tells us that if the symbol be stirred from the place where it has lain for so many years, the floodgate will roll back, and the waters of the lake will pour in upon the city, destroying it and its inhabitants. Yet the floodgate cannot roll back when it is not shut, nor can the waters flow in during the dry season, when they are not on a level with the walls," answered Maya. "They cannot, lady, and yet other things may happen. Why was the heart set thus? Was it not that in the utmost need of its worshippers they might choose death rather than defeat and slavery? And was this choice given to them in the wet months only? Be sure that if at this moment any despairing or impious hand tore yonder symbol from its altar, either the waters would rush up through the bed of the city, or subterranean fires would break loose and burn it. Still, though there is something, I think that we have little to fear, seeing that the writer says that in order to bring about so terrible a doom, the symbol must be torn from its altar with might. Now to our task. Stranger, give to the Lady Maya your half of the ancient talisman, that she may set it, together with the half she bears, in the place prepared in the symbol." With a sigh, seeing that it was too late to draw back, I undid the emerald from my neck and gave it to Maya, who laid it side by side with its counterpart upon the palm of her trembling hand, and stepped with it to the altar. Here she stood for a moment, then whispered in a faint voice, "Terror has taken hold of me, and I fear to do this thing, yet it must be done." "And not by me," said Mattai, "or we shall have come on a fool's errand and go back, some of us, to a fool's death." And he looked towards me. "I will not do it," I said, answering his look, "not because I fear your gods, but my own conscience I do fear." "Then I will," said the señor boldly, "for I fear neither. Give me that trinket, Maya." She obeyed, and presently he had caused the two halves of the talisman to fall into their ancient and appointed bed in the symbol. In the great silence I remember the sound they made as they tinkled against the stone struck my ears so sharply that I started. For some seconds, perhaps 20, we stood still, watching the altar with eager eyes, but the symbol never stirred. Then I said, "It seems, Mattai, that you must hide your writing elsewhere, since yonder heart will not open, or if it will, we have not found the key." "Wait a little," broke in the señor, "perhaps the springs are rusted," and before any of us could interfere to stop him, he placed his thumbs upon the halves of the emerald and pressed so hard that the symbol trembled on its marble stand. "Beware!" cried Mattai, and as the echoes of his voice died away, all of us started in astonishment, for lo! the heart was opening like a flower. Slowly it opened till the severed talisman fell from it, and the two halves lay back on the marble on the altar, revealing something hidden in its centre that shone like an ember in the lamplight. We crept forward and looked, then stood silent and half afraid, for in the hollow of the heart, laid upon a square plate of gold which was covered with picture writing, glared a red jewel shaped like a human eye that seemed to answer stare with stare. "If we stand like this we shall grow frightened," said the señor roughly, glancing round him as he spoke. "There is nothing to fear in a red stone cut out like an eye." "If you think so, white man," answered Mattai in a voice that shook a little, strive as he would to command it, "lift up the holy thing and give me the writing that is beneath it. Stay, first take this. Set it in the symbol, replacing the eye upon it," and he handed him a forged tablet. The señor obeyed, nor did any wonder come to pass when he lifted that dreadful-looking jewel and changed the true for the false. "Read it," said Maya, as the tablet was passed to Mattai. "You have knowledge of the ancient writings." "Perhaps it were best left unread," he said doubtfully. "Nay," she answered, "let us know the worst. Read it, I bid you." Then he read these strange words in a slow and solemn voice: "The eye that has slept and is awakened sees the heart and purpose of the wicked. I say that in the hour of the desolation of my city not all the waters of the holy lake shall wash away their sin." Now the faces of us who heard turned grey in the lamplight, for though the gods of this people were false, we felt that the voice of a true prophet spoke to us from the accusing tablet, and that we had called down upon our heads a vengeance which we could not measure. "Did I not tell you that it were wiser to leave the writing unread?" gasped Mattai, letting the tablet fall from his hand as though it were a snake. The clatter of it as it struck the marble floor seemed to wake us from our evil dream, for the señor turned to him and said fiercely: "What does it matter what the thing says, rogue, seeing that you forged it as you forged the other?" "Ah, would that I had," answered Mattai. "When doom overtakes you and all of us, then shall you learn whether I forged that ancient writing." He lifted it from the floor, and, hiding it in his robe, added: "Close the heart, white man, and give back the severed jewel to those who wear it." The señor obeyed, replacing the silken cloth over the symbol so that the altar seemed to be as it had been. "Now let us be going," said Mattai, "and rejoice that if yonder eye has seen our wickedness, at least it is hidden from the sight of man. Doubtless the vengeance of the gods is sure, but that of man is swift." As he spoke, we turned to leave the sanctuary, and of a sudden Maya screamed and would have fallen had not the señor caught her. Well might she scream, for there in the narrow niche of the secret door by which we had entered, framed in it as a corpse is framed in its coffin, stood a white figure, which at first I took to be that of some avenging ghost, so ghost-like were the wrappings, the snowy beard and hair, and the thin, fierce face. Another instant, and I saw that indeed it was a ghost, the ghost of Zibalbay, or rather his body come back from the boundaries of death to spy upon our sacrilege before it crossed them for ever. Yes, it was Zibalbay, for while he had seemed to be unconscious upon the bed in the chamber, his senses were awake, and oh, what must he have suffered when he, the high priest of the nameless god, heard us plan our fraud upon his sanctuary. Then, after we had left him, fury and despair unfettered the limbs that had been bound so fast, and gave him strength to follow us, though they could not unlock his frozen tongue. He had followed. Painfully he had crept down the stairs, along the passages, and through the open door, for the path was known to him even in the dark, till at length he came to the secret entrance of the sanctuary. Here once more his force deserted him. Here, unable to speak or stir, he had leaned against the wall and seen and heard all that was done and said. Oh, never shall I forget the rage of his quivering face, or the agony and horror of his tormented eyes as they met our own. No curse could have been so awful as that look which he let fall upon his daughter. No outraged deity or demon could have seemed more terrible to the human sight than was the tall figure of this dying man, striving even in death to protect the honour of his gods, which we had violated in their most ancient Holy of Holies. Never have I seen such a dreadful sight, and I pray that never again may I do so, either in this world or the next." The dying Zibalbay saw our fear, and with a last effort he staggered forward toward his daughter, his clenched hands held above his head. For a moment he stood before her as she lay upon her lover's arm, staring up at him like a bird at a snake, while he swayed to and fro above her like a snake about to strike. Then, of a sudden, foam mingled with blood burst from his lips, and he sank down at her feet, dead, dying in a silence that was more awful than any sound. Of all that followed I need not write. Indeed, I cannot. So great was my horror at this scene, and so intense the strain which was put upon my vital force during these hours, that I have little memory of what chanced after Zibalbay's death, till I found myself lying exhausted upon the bed in my prison cell. Somehow we calmed and silenced Maya. Somehow we escaped from that hateful sanctuary, and by slow degrees brought her and the dead body of her father up the narrow stairs and passages to the hall above, where we laid the corpse upon its bed. Then Mattai left us, and I remember no more till the next morning, when nobles and leeches came to watch by the body of the dead /cacique, and to embalm it in readiness for the tomb. The next 2 days went heavily for the three of us, oppressed as we were by the silent gloom of our prison and the memories of that dreadful night. The love between Maya and her father had never been deep, for they were out of tune with each other. Still, now that he was dead, she mourned him, the more perhaps because he had died hating and cursing her. By degrees she recovered from her superstitious fears, born of the writing and the symbol, but her father's maledictions she never could forget, and though she was willing to earn and to bear these for the sake of her love for the señor, I think that the memory lay between them like a shadow. "Oh, why did I ever love you?" she would say. "What have you to do with me, whom race and law and fate have set apart from me?" And yet she went on loving him even more dearly. I also was unhappy, for though I put little faith in these omens or in the vapourings of dead prophets and the tricks of living charlatans, I felt that ill luck which had clung to me in the past was with me still. Things had gone cross with me. Zibalbay was dead, and woman, the inevitable, had drawn away the heart of my friend, and dragged me and my plans into the whirlpool of her passions, whence, if at all, they must emerge ruined and shapeless. Still, summoning the patience of my race to my aid, I bore these secret troubles as I might, giving counsel and comfort to the lovers who, lost in their own doubts and difficulties, thought, as was natural, little of me and my ambitions. At length they carried away the corpse of Zibalbay to be wrapped in its winding sheet of gold, and set with all ancient pomp and ceremony by those of its forefathers in the hall of the dead. Maya wept indeed, but I, for my part, was glad to see the last of him. So I think was the señor, whose spirits had begun to fail him in the presence of so much remorse and grief. That day, it was the day previous to the night of the rising of the waters, on which we were to appear before the Council of the Heart in the sanctuary. Tikal came to visit us. To Maya he bowed low, but on the señor and myself he looked with an angry eye, with the eye indeed of one who would have killed us if he dared. First, with many fine words and empty compliments, he offered her his sympathy upon the death of her father. For this she returned her thanks, quoting, however, with a flash of her old spirit, a certain proverb of her own people, of which the meaning is that the death of one man is the breath of another. "My father was your foe, Tikal," she added, "and now that he is gone you will be able to sleep and reign in peace." "Not altogether so, lady," he answered, "seeing that he has left behind him a more dangerous rival to my power, namely yourself. I will not hide from you, Maya, what you soon must learn, that a large portion of the people, and with them many of the nobles, accusing me of your father's murder, clamour that I should be deposed, and that you should be set in my place as cacique of the City of the Heart. Some few days ago I might have stilled their outcry by commanding you to be put to death, but now it is too late, for since then time has fought for you, and doubtless your end would be followed by my own. When last we met, cousin, I asked you a certain question to which you promised me to answer when your father was dead or recovered, and today I have come to hear that answer. While Zibalbay lived, I had much to offer him and you in exchange for your hand, and I offered it freely. So high a value did I place upon it when it seemed lost to me that I was prepared to lay down my power, to suffer your father to violate the laws, and to incur the eternal hate and enmity of Mattai, his daughter, and his party. Now I must make you a lower bid, that of equal power for myself, and for your friends here, whatever they may desire. Should you refuse me, this is the alternative: civil war in the city till one of us is destroyed, and instant death as the portion of these strangers. But, Maya, I pray you not to refuse me, for I have something more to offer you, my undying love. From a child I have always loved you, Maya, although you have treated me coldly enough, and now day by day I love you more. Indeed, I believed that you and your father were dead yonder in the wilderness, for then I had faith in Mattai, whom now I know to be a rogue, and Mattai swore that it was written in the stars. Even so, I would not have wed another woman, for my heart bled at the loss of you, had not Mattai made this marriage the price of his support, without which I could not hope to be anointed /cacique, seeing that I have many jealous enemies. It was ambition that led me to consent, and bitterly have I regretted my folly ever since. For if she who is called my wife loves me, I hate her, and by this means or by that I will be rid of her. Forgive me, then, my sin against you, remembering only that I have loved and served you in the past, as I will love and serve you in the future, and that it was you who brought about these troubles, because, though I prayed you to stay and did all in my power to prevent you, you determined to accompany your father upon his mad journey into the wilderness. Now I have spoken, and I thank you for the courtesy with which you have listened to me." "You have spoken, cousin," she answered, "and your words have been gentle. Yet, if I understand you right, some few days since you were in doubt as to whether it would not be better to murder me here in this darksome hole where you have placed us." "If policy put any such thought into my mind, Maya, love drove it out again," he answered with confusion. "So you admit that this was so?" she said. "Well, a day may come when policy might breed the thought, and love grown weary prove not warm enough to wither it. Also, it seems that even now you threaten these, my companions, with death, should I refuse you your desire. If you should refuse me my desire, Maya, perhaps it will be for a secret reason of your own," and he scowled at the señor angrily, "a reason that the death of these men, or one of them, will remove." "Be sure of one thing, Tikal," she broke in sharply, "that such a wicked deed would put an end for ever to your hopes of making me your wife. Now listen. I have heard your words, and they have touched me somewhat, for I think that although you have broken your oath to my father, and your troth to me, at heart you are honest in your love. Still, I can give you no answer now, and for this reason, that the answer does not lie with me, but rather with the gods. Tomorrow night we appear before the High Court of the Council of the Heart, and you yourself shall set the severed portions of the talisman that have travelled so far to seek in the place prepared to receive it, in the symbol that is on the altar of the sanctuary. Then, as my dead father believed, and he was gifted with wisdom from above, the god shall declare his purpose in this way or in that, showing his servants why all these things have come about, and what they must do to fulfil his will. By that will, cousin, and not by my own, I shall be guided in this and in all other things." Tikal thought a while and answered, "If nothing follows this ceremony, and the oracles of the god are silent, then what?" "Then, Tikal," she said softly, "you may ask me again if I will become your wife, and perhaps, if the council suffers it, I shall not say nay. Now, farewell, for grief still shadows me, and I can talk no more." End of chapter 19. Heart of the World by H. Rider Haggard. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 20. The Council of the Heart. When Tikal was gone, I sat silent, for although it might be necessary to save our lives and to bring about the fulfilment of Maya's love, all this double-dealing did not please me, and I could not talk of it with a light heart. But the señor said, "I hope that yonder rogue Mattai may not have repented or been overbribed by Tikal and set some other prophecy in the hollow of the symbol. Then, Maya, you will be taken at your word, and things will be worse than ever they have been." "I pray not, and it is not likely," she answered, starting. Then, with a quick burst of passion, she added, "Why do you look at me with such reproach, Ignacio? No, do not answer, for I know. It is because you think me a cheat and a liar, and are saying in your heart, 'This is a woman's honour.' Thus would any woman act in the hour of temptation. Ignacio, with all your courtesy, you hate and despise us women, looking on us as lower than yourselves, as a snare to your strength and a pitfall for your feet. Well, if so, thus were we made, and can we quarrel with that which made us? Also, in some ways, we are greater than you, though you may not be pleased to call yourselves more honest. You would not have dared for your love what I have dared for mine. You would not have offered deadly outrage to the God of your people to the instinct of your blood and the teachings of your youth. No, you would have sat still and wrung your hands and seen your lover perish before your face, and then have turned your eyes to the sky and said, "It cannot be helped, it is well. At least I am clean in the sight of heaven." So be it. I, Maya, am of a different nature. I have dared all these things, and I joy in them, even though you watch me ever with your melancholy eyes. Why should I not? Is not my love everything to me, and is it shameful that this should be so? I believe no more in the unknown God. Why then should I fear to offend him? I will not see my betrothed given up to death, and myself to worse than death. And how can I harm my people by taking a man nobler than themselves to be my husband? Cease then to reproach me by your silence, or rather learn to pity me, for my strait is sore, and doubtless vengeance dogs my heels. Let it fall, if it will, on me, but not on you, beloved, oh, not on you." And suddenly her anger left her, and she sank into the señor's arms to lie there weeping bitterly. I went to the further end of the hall and sat reading the ancient writings of this people which we had found in the chamber. Indeed, this was my daily occupation, for now I found that these lovers liked to be alone, unless it happened that there were plans to be thought out or counsel to be given. A shadow grew between me and the señor in those days, for though he said nothing of it, he also was angry because I did not approve of the dark plot to which we were parties, and Maya's outburst spoke his name with her own. Nor was this wonderful. Now, looking back, I do not blame her or him, or think that they did wrong. I believe what I really felt was not indignation at a trick which might well be pardoned, seeing how much hung to it, but superstitious fear lest some force, human or infernal, should visit that trick with vengeance. For, as we know, even the devils have power against us if we give it to them by fighting the world with our own weapons. On the following day, the attendants who set our meals brought with them clean robes for each of us, scented and wonderfully worked, and for Maya certain royal ornaments. In these we arrayed ourselves before evening and waited. The hours passed, and at length the copper gates were opened, and a band of nobles and guards presented themselves before us, saying that they were commanded to lead us to the sanctuary. We answered that nothing would please us better, who were heartily weary of living like rats in the dark, and in a few minutes we found ourselves walking up the stairs toward the crest of the pyramid. We reached it and saw the stars shining above us, and felt the breath of heaven blowing in our faces, and never has a sight of the stars or the taste of the night air seemed more sweet to me. Leaving the watch house, we walked to the great stair across the lonely summit of the pyramid, and began to descend its side. At the foot of the stairway we turned to the right, till we came to a double door of copper, beautifully worked, placed in the centre of the western face of the pyramid, and guarded by a small body of soldiers, who saluted and admitted us. Beyond the doors was a great hall, not unlike that which had served as our prison, lit with lamps lined with polished marble, and having on either side of its length other doorways leading to the apartments that were used as sleeping places for the officers on duty. At the threshold of this hall we were met by priests, clothed in pure white, into whose custody we were given by the company of nobles and soldiers that had escorted us thus far. Surrounded by the priests who chanted as they walked, we passed down the hall till we reached another and a smaller door. Beyond this lay a labyrinth of steeply sloping passages, running in every direction deep into the bowels of the rock beneath the pyramid. So intricate and numerous were these tunnels that even with the assistance of the lights which the priests carried, it would have been almost impossible for anyone not having their secret to find a path through them, or even to keep his face in a given direction for more than a few paces. Along these passageways our guides went without faltering, turning now to the right, now to the left, and now seeming to retrace their footsteps, till at length they halted to open a third door, covered over with plates of beaten gold, on the further side of which lay the most sacred spot, save one in the City of the Heart. It was a chamber that served the threefold purpose of a judgment hall, a church wherein the nobles attended worship, and a burial place of the departed /caciques/ of the city. Here in this vast and awful vault, each of them set in his own niche, and companioned by his consort, stood the bodies of every king priest who had reigned in the holy city, enclosed in coffins of solid gold, fashioned to the shape and likeness of the corpse within, and having the name, age, date of the death, and a brief account of the good or evil that the man had done, cut in symbols on his breast. There they stood eternally, men and women made in gold, and beneath their brows gleamed false eyes of emeralds. Numerous as were the niches in the chamber, each had its tenants, and in the last recess, that nearest to the entrance, stood a newcomer. For here in his gilded sheath was placed the corpse of Zibalbay, by the side of her who had been his wife and Maya's mother. For a moment Maya paused to look upon the bodies of her parents. Then, with a sigh and an obeisance, she passed on, saying to me, "See, this hall of the dead is full. There is no place left for me, or for my descendants, and surely this is an evil omen. Well," she added with a sigh, "what does it matter where they set us when we are dead? For my part, I had sooner sleep in the earth or beneath the waters than stand for ever cased in gold and glaring with jewelled eyes upon the darkness. Yes, if I might, I should choose the earth that bore me, for it would turn my flesh to flowers." Then we went on, defiling before the silent company of the golden dead, who seemed to watch us as we walked, till, passing round a judgment seat that was set near the end of the hall, we stood in front of a little door over which burned great lamps. This door was guarded by two priests with drawn swords, which they pointed toward us as a sign that we should halt. Then the priest who had escorted us so far fell back behind the judgment seat, and we were left alone. "Give the sign, keepers of the gate," said Maya. Thereupon one of the men with the drawn swords uttered a low and peculiar cry, like the wail of a child. When he had made this strange sound thrice at intervals of about half a minute, it was answered from within by another and louder cry, pitched upon the same note. Then of a sudden the door was flung wide, and a stern-looking man with a shaven head came through it. "Who are you that seek entrance into the sanctuary?" he asked. "Are you gods or devils, men or women?" "We are two men and a woman," answered Maya, "priests and priestesses of the Heart, and we come to take our trial before the Council of the Heart, as is our right." Do you know the open signs of the heart, the signs of brotherhood and of unity and of love, that you dare to stand upon the threshold of the sanctuary, to cross which is death to the ignorant?" "We know them," answered Maya, and one by one we gave those signs. "Do you know the secret signs of the heart, that you dare to cross this threshold?" he asked again. "Otherwise, get you back and take your trial in the common judgment hall." "I know them," answered Maya, "and I vouch for these men who accompany me. Suffer me then to enter, and these with me, for I am here by ancient right, and I have knowledge both of the outward signs and the inner mysteries." Now the man withdrew, and the door was closed behind him. Presently he appeared again and said, "I have reported to the council, and it is the will of the council that you should enter." "Follow me," said Maya to us, "and when you are spoken to, make no answer till I have vouched for you. I will answer for you." The priests let their swords fall, and passing through the doors, for there were two of them connected by a short passage, once more we found ourselves standing beneath the mask of the unknown god in the sanctuary of the City of the Heart, but now it was no longer empty. Behind the little altar were 3 stools, and upon them, clad in wonderful apparel and adorned with gold and gems, sat Tikal, Mattai, and Nahua, who was the only woman present. In front of the altar was an open space, and beyond its circle, each wearing the orders of his spiritual rank, sat the Brethren of the Heart, according to their degree, to the number of 36. Led by Maya, we advanced into the space before the altar, and stood there in silence. None of those present took note of us. Indeed, they did not seem to see us, but sat with bent heads and with hands folded crosswise on their breasts. At length one of the brethren, he who was nearest to the door and had questioned us without, rose, and addressing Tikal, said, "Keeper of the Heart, one who claims to be of our company stands before you, and with her 2 of whom she vouches, who, although they be strangers by your command, I have proved to be Brethren of the Heart, though what more they may be I know not. Be pleased, then, to prove them also by the voice of their sponsor, that their mouths may be opened and their prayer come to the ears of the council." At his words 2 of the brethren rose and blindfolded the señor and myself, lest we should see the sacred signs, with all of which indeed I was well acquainted, but Maya they did not blindfold. Then we heard Tikal asking, "How are you named, who are strange to our eyes?" We made no reply, for a voice in our ears cautioned us to be silent. "We are named the Son of the Sea and Ignatio the Wanderer," answered the voice of Maya. "Son of the Sea and Ignatio the Wanderer, why come you here?" asked Tikal. "Through the gate on which is written, 'Death to the stranger and the uninstructed.'" "Because we have a prayer to utter, an offering to make, and because, although we dwell in a far land, we are the servants of the Heart," answered Maya. "How come ye here?" "The Heart led, the mouth whispered, and we followed the light of the eyes." "Show me the sign of the light of the eyes, or die to this world." Now there was silence, and though we could not see it, Maya showed the sign on our behalf. "Show me the second sign, the sign of the mouth, or be cursed by the mouth, and die to this world and the next." Again there was silence. "Show me the sign of the heart, the third and greatest sign, lest the heart think of you, and you die to this world, to the next world, and all the worlds that are to be, lest ye be cast out between the light and darkness, and lost in the gulf of fire that joins heaven to hell." Now we heard a sound of rustling, as though all the company had risen and were prostrating themselves, and presently the bandages were lifted from our eyes. "Strangers," said Tikal, "your mouths are opened in the sanctuary according to the ancient form, and it is lawful for the council to listen to your prayer. Speak, then, without fear." Then I spoke, saying, "Brethren, for so I will dare to call you, seeing that I also, though a stranger, am of the brotherhood of the heart, as I can prove to you if need be, I, in higher rank than any present here, unless it be you, O keeper of the heart. On my own behalf, on behalf of my brother, who also is of our company, and on behalf of Maya, Lady of the Heart, daughter of him who ruled you, and heiress to his power, I speak and make my prayer to you. It would seem that we three, together with Zibalbay, who is dead, and therefore beyond the execution of your judgment, have violated the laws of this city, we by daring to enter its gates, and Zibalbay and the Lady Maya by leading us to those gates. For this crime we should have been put to death 8 days ago upon the pyramid, had not the Lady Maya here claimed a right to have our cause laid before this high tribunal. In her case, and in that of her father, this was conceded, and I pray now that the same clemency may be extended to me and to my brother." "Upon what grounds do you claim this, stranger?" asked Tikal. "Upon the ground that we are brethren to the inmost circle of the heart, and therefore have committed no crime in visiting this city, which is free to us by right of our rank and office." Now there was a murmur of "True" from the council behind me, and Tikal also said "True," but added, "If you are brethren of the inmost circle of the heart, you are free from offence. But first you must prove that this is so, which as yet you have not done. A brother of the inmost circle knows its mysteries, and can answer the secret questions. Come, let us put you to the test. But first, let the white man be removed from the sanctuary, for in this matter each must vouch for himself." Accordingly the señor was led away, and the doors having been closed and the lamps shaded, the oldest and most instructed of the councillors stood forward and put me to the test with many questions, all of which I answered readily. Then they commanded me to stand before the altar, and, as keeper of the heart, to open the heart in the highest degree. This I did also, though afterwards they told me that my ritual differed in some particulars from their own. After that I took up my parable and questioned them, till at length none there could answer me, no, not even the high priest or Mattai. Indeed, they confessed humbly that I was more instructed than any one of them, and because of this knowledge, from that day forward I was held in veneration in the City of the Heart. Now I was given a seat among the brethren, the highest after those of the chief priest and the great officers, and the señor was summoned. He entered with a downcast look, and while Maya and I watched him sadly, his examination began. It was not long. At the second question he became confused and used angry language in Spanish and English, and broke down. "Brethren," said Tikal, and there was joy in his eye as he spoke, "it seems to me that we need not trouble further with the impostor. By daring to enter our city he has earned the penalty of death. Moreover, he has blackened his crime by claiming to be of our brotherhood. whereas he scarcely knows the simplest password. It is your will that he should be taken to this fate? If so, speak the word of doom." Now Maya arose, affrighted, but motioning to her to be silent, I spoke, saying, "Hear me before the fatal word is spoken which cannot be recalled. This man is of our inmost brotherhood, though he has not been formally admitted to the inner circles, and has forgotten those of the mysteries which were taught to him at his initiation. Listen, and I will tell you how he came to join the Order of the Heart." Then I told them the tale of my rescue by the señor, told them also of the story of our meeting with Zibalbay, and of our journey to the City of the Heart, speaking to them for an hour or more, while they hearkened earnestly. When I had done, they debated as to the fate of the señor, and, though by only one vote, decided that, if I had nothing more to urge on his behalf, he must straightway die. "I have something more to urge before you pass judgment," I said in my need and despair, speaking and acting a lie to save the life of my beloved friend. Yes, I who had blamed Maya for this same deed. "Though it has to do with the mysteries of your religion rather than those of our order. It was the belief of Zibalbay, who is dead, that when the two halves of the ancient talisman, the halves night and morning, that together make the perfect day, are set in their place in the symbol which once they filled before the dividing of the peoples, then it shall be made clear what part must be played by each of us wanderers in the fate that is to be. To this end did Zibalbay undertake his journey, and lo, here is that which he went to seek." I drew the talisman from my breast, adding, "Take it, Tikal, for I resign it, and I lay it with its fellow in the place that is prepared for them, so that we may learn, and that all your people may learn, what truth there is in the visions of Zibalbay." "That is our desire," answered Tikal, taking the severed emerald and its counterpart, which Maya gave to him. "Let the white man, son of the sea, be placed without the sanctuary and guarded there a while, for so at least he will gain time to prepare himself for death. Fear not, lady," he added, noting Maya's anxious face. "No harm shall be done to him till this matter of the prophecy is made clear." Now, for the second time, the señor was removed. When he had gone, Tikal spoke, tracing the history of the prophecy so far as it was known, and reciting its substances, that when once more the two halves of the symbol of the heart were laid side by side in their place on the altar in the sanctuary, then from that hour the people should grow great again. "In all this," he said, "I have little faith. Still, Zibalbay, who in his way was wise, believed it, and the story having gone abroad, the people clamour that it should be put to the test. Is this your will also?" "It is our will," answered the councillors. "Good. Then let it be done, and on your heads be it, if harm should come of the deed. Mattai, the council commands you to set these fragments in the hollow of the symbol." "If such is the order of the council, I have no choice but to obey," said Mattai. "Yet, though none else have done so, I give my voice against it, for I hold that this is childishness, and never did I know any good to spring from prophecies." And he paused as though waiting for the answer. "Obey, obey," said the council, for curiosity had got hold of them, and they craned their necks forward to see what might happen. "Obey," repeated Tikal, "but beware how you shake the heart, lest the legend prove true and we should perish in the doom of waters." Then Mattai set the two halves of the talisman in their place, and, as before, in the midst of an utter silence, lo, the symbol opened like a flower. Leaning forward, I saw the eye within its hollow, but it seemed to me that the fire had faded from the heart of the jewel, for now it gleamed coldly, like the eye of a man who is 2 hours dead. I think that Mattai noted this also, for as the symbol opened he started, and his hand shook. Now, when they saw the marvel, a gasp of wonder rose from the council. Then Tikal spoke, saying, "It seems that there was wisdom in Zibalbay's madness, for the heart has opened indeed, and within it is a stone eye resting upon a plate of gold that is covered with writing." "Read the writing," they cried. Displacing the eye, Tikal lifted the plate of gold and scanned it. "I cannot," he said, shaking his head. "It is written in a character more ancient than any I have learned. Take it, Mattai, for you are instructed in such signs." Mattai took the tablet and studied it long with an anxious face, upon which at length light broke that chanced anon to wonder, or rather blank amaze, so that I, watching him, began to think, not knowing all the cleverness of Mattai, that the señor was right, and the tablet had been tampered with since we saw it. "Read, read," cried the council. "Brethren," he said, "the words seem clear, yet so strange in this writing that I fear my learning is at fault, and that I had best give it to others to decipher." "No, read, read," they cried again, almost angrily. Then he read: "This is the voice of the nameless God that his prophet heard in the year of the beginning of the sanctuary, and graved upon a tablet of gold, which he set in a secret place in the symbol of the sanctuary, to be declared in that far-off hour when the lost is found and the signs of the day and the night are come together. To thee it speaks, unborn daughter to a chief to be, whose name is the name of a nation. When my people have grown old and their numbers are lessened and their heart is faint, then, maiden, take to thyself as a husband a man of the race of the white god, a son of the sea foam, who thou shalt lead hither across the desert. So my people shall once more prosper and grow strong, and the land shall be to thy child and the child of the god east and west and north and south, further than the eagle's wing between sunrise and set." Now, as Mattai read, the face of Tikal grew black with rage, and before ever the echoes of his voice had died away, he sprang from his seat, crying, "Whoever it was that wrote this lying prophecy, god or man, let him be accused. Shall the Lady Maya, for her it must be whose name is the name of a nation, be given in marriage to the white dog who awaits his doom without that door, and shall his son rule over us? First will I see her dead, and him with her." Then one of the oldest of the council, a man named Demas, who, as I learned afterwards, had been foster brother to Zibalbay, rose and answered wrathily, "It seems that these things must be so, Tikal, and beware how you utter threats of death, lest they should fall upon your own head. We have called upon the god, and the god has spoken in no uncertain voice. The Lady Maya must become wife to the white man, son of the sea, and then things shall befall as they are fated." "What?" answered Tikal. "Is this wandering stranger to be set over me and all of us?" "That I do not know," said the councillor. "The writing does not say so. The writing says that his son shall be set over us, and as yet he has no son. But this is certain, that the Lady Maya must be given to him as wife, and in her right he well may rule, seeing that she is the lawful heir to her father, and not you, Tikal, although you have usurped her place." Now many voices called upon Maya, till she stood forward and spoke with downcast eyes. "What shall I say," she began, "except one thing, that my will is the will of gods, and if it is fated that I should be given to the white man in marriage, why, so let it be. For many years I was taught to look elsewhere, but he who was to have been my husband," and she pointed towards Tikal, "chose himself another wife, and now I see that he did this not altogether of his own will, but because it was so decreed. One thing more, I, who am but woman, have no desire to rule or to take the place that the Lady Nahua holds. The writing says that in a day to come, a far-off day, some child of mine, if indeed I am that daughter of the chief, whose name is the name of a nation, shall rule in truth. Let him then come in his hour and take the glories that await him, and meanwhile, Tikal, do you sit in your place and leave me to rest in peace." "The Lady Maya speaks you fair, Tikal, and my daughter," said Mattai, "and if the people will have it, you may do well to accept her offer, leaving the future to shape itself. She says she is ready to take the white man as a husband, but we have not yet heard whether the white man will take her as a wife. It may be," he added with a smile, "that he will rather choose to die, but at least we must have an answer from his lips, that is, if you accept this prophecy as sent from heaven. Say, do you accept it?" "We accept it," answered the council, almost with a single voice. "Then let the white man, son of the sea, be brought before us," said Mattai. End of chapter 20. Heart of the World by H. Rider Haggard. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 21. The Marriage of Maya. Presently the door opened, and the señor was led into the sanctuary, as he thought, to his death, for I saw that his teeth were set, and that his hand was clenched, as though to defend himself. But as he came, the most of the council rose and bowed to him, saying, "Hail to you, son of the sea, favoured of heaven, father foreordained of the deliverer to come." Then he knew that the plot had succeeded, and uttered a great sigh of relief. "Hearken, white lord," said Mattai, for Tikal sat still and scowled on him in silence. "The gods have spoken by their oracle. As Zibalbay thought, so it is, and your feet have been led for a purpose to the gates of the City of the Heart. Listen to the words of the gods." And taking the tablet, he read to him the false prophecy. "Now choose, white man. Will you take the Lady Maya to wife, or will you be put to death in that, having wandered to the City of the Heart, you refuse to obey the command of its gods?" Then the señor thought and answered, "The man would be foolish who hesitated between death and so fair and sweet a bride. Still, this is a matter that I cannot decide alone. What says the Lady Maya?" "She says," answered Maya, "that although this is a marriage for which she did not look, and it is a new thing that a daughter of the Heart should take a stranger of less ancient blood to husband, the will of heaven is her will, and the Lord that heaven chooses for her shall be her Lord. And she stretched out her hand to the señor. He took it, and bending down, kissed her fingers, saying, "May I be worthy of your choice, lady." Now I thought that the ceremonies were finished, and was glad, for I grew weary of assisting at this farce. But the old priest, Zibalbay's foster brother, rose and said, "One thing more must be done, brethren, before we leave this sanctuary, and it is to swear in these strangers as members of the council. They have wandered here from far, and here with us they must live and die, seeing that both of them know our secrets, and one of them is predestined to become the father of that great lord for whose arising we have looked for many generations. Therefore, until the child is born, he must be watched and guarded as priests watch a sacred fire." "Aye, it is well thought of. Let them be sworn, and learn that to break the oath is death," was the answer. Then Mattai rose as keeper of the sanctuary and said, "You, white man, son of the sea, and you, Ignatio, the wanderer, a lord of the heart, do swear upon the holy symbol of the heart the oath to break, which is to die horribly in this world, and to be lost everlastingly in the worlds that are to be. You swear, setting in pledge your souls and bodies for the fulfilment of the oath, that neither by word nor sign nor deed will you reveal aught of the mysteries or the counsels of this brotherhood, whereof you will be the faithful servants till your deaths, holding it supreme above every power upon earth. You swear that you will not possess yourselves of the treasures of the City of the Heart, nor, without the consent of this high brotherhood, attempt to leave its gates or to bring any strangers within its walls. These things you swear with your hands upon the altar, setting in pledge your souls and bodies for the fulfilment of the oath. Other clauses there were also, which I have forgotten, but this was the substance of the vow that was dictated to us. We looked at each other helplessly, and then, there being no escape, we swore, kneeling before the altar, with our hands resting upon it. As the solemn words of confirmation passed our lips, we heard a sound of the movement of heavy stones behind us. "Arise now," said the old priest. "Turn, brethren, and look upon that which lies behind you." We obeyed, and the next instant shrank back against the altar in alarm, for within 6 feet of us a massive stone in the floor had been lifted, revealing the mouth of a well, from the deep recesses of which came the distant sound of rushing waters. "Behold, brethren," he went on, "and should the oath which you have sworn be broken in a single letter, learn after what fashion you must suffer for your sins. Into that pit you shall be cast, that the water may choke your breath, and the demons of the underworld may prey upon your souls through all eternity. Have you seen, and seeing, do you understand?" "We have seen, and we understand," we answered. "Then let the mouth of the pit be sealed again, and pray you in your hearts that it may never be opened to receive the living body of you or any of us. Son of the Sea, and you, Ignatio the Wanderer, the oaths have been sworn, and the ceremony is finished. Henceforth, till your deaths, you are of our number, sharers in our rights and privileges, and you will be assigned houses, attendants, and revenues fitted to your situation. Go forth, brethren, that you may refresh yourselves, and prepare to meet the people upon the summit of the pyramid at dawn, that is, within an hour. Lead them away with you, my lord Mattai." So we went, leaving behind us the talisman of the broken heart, for the priest refused to return it to me, saying that at length the tokens named Day and Night had come together in their ancient place, and henceforth there they must bide forever. Accompanied by Maya, Mattai, and the escort of priests, we passed through the halls and passages out into the courtyard of the temple, and thence to apartments in the palace, where we refreshed ourselves with food, for we were weary. The trick had succeeded, the ordeal was past, and for the present at least we were no longer in danger of our lives. More, the power of Mattai was confirmed. His daughter was assured in her position as the wife of Tikal. Also, the señor and the Lady Maya were about to attain to the fullness of their desire, and to be declared one in the presence of the people. Yet never did I partake in a sadder meal, or behold faces more oppressed by care and the fear of the future. For though nothing was said, in our hearts each of us knew that we had become parties to a crime, and that sooner or later, in this way or in that, our evil doing would find us out. Putting this matter aside, I myself had good reason to mourn, seeing that whatever the others had gained, I had won nothing. Moreover, I found myself bound by a solemn oath not even to attempt to leave this city, whither I had journeyed with such high hopes. Well, the thing was done, and it was useless to regret it or to think of the future. So, turning to Mattai, I asked him what was to happen on the pyramid. "There will be a great gathering of the people," he answered, "as is customary at dawn after the night of the rising of waters, and there will be told all that has happened in the sanctuary. Then, if it is their will, Tikal will be confirmed as /cacique according to the bargain, and either today or tomorrow the white man here will become the husband of the Lady Maya, in order," he added with a sneer, "that of their union may be born to deliver who is to be. Now, if you are ready, it is time for us to go, for the multitude is gathered, and an escort waits without." Leaving the palace, we placed ourselves in the centre of a party of nobles and guards who were in attendance, and marched across the courtyard and up the steps of the pyramid. The night was growing grey with the breaking of the dawn, and in the pearly light through which the stars shone faintly, we perceived that bands of priests and nobles, wrapped in their broidered serapes, for the morning air was chilly, stood in their appointed places round the altar. In front of them were ranged the dense masses of the people, drawn here to make their prayers upon this feast day, and also by desire to learn the truth as to the death of Zibalbay, the fate of the strangers who had accompanied him from the unknown lands, the decision of the council as to the successor to the place and power of /cacique, and lastly, whether or no the oracle of the god had spoken to his priests upon this or any other matter when the lost talisman was set in its place in the sanctuary. On reaching the altar, seats were given to us among the nobles of the heart, those of Maya and the señor being placed in such fashion that they would be visible to the whole multitude. Then followed a silence, till at length a priest, who was stationed upon the roof of the watch house, blew a silver trumpet and proclaimed that the dawn had broken, whereon bands of singers who were in readiness began to chant a very beautiful hymn, of which the refrain was caught up by the audience, As they sang, a beam from the rising sun struck upon the fire that burned above the altar, and again the trumpet sounded. Then, in the silence that followed, the priest who stood by the fire, clothed in white robes, prayed in a loud voice, saying, "O God, our God, let our sins die with the dying year. O God, our God, strengthen us with thy strength, comfort us with thy comfort during the year that is to be. O God, our God, have pity upon us, lift us from the darkness of the past, and give us light in the coming time. Hear us, Heart of Heaven, hear us." He ceased, and from the surrounding gloom many voices made a response, saying, "Hear us, Heart of Heaven, hear us." For a space the old priest stood still, the firelight flickering on his tall form and rapt countenance as he gazed toward the east. Greyer and more grey grew the gloom, till of a sudden a ray from the unrisen sun shot through the shadows like a spear and fell athwart the summit of the pyramid, paling the holy fire that seemed to shrink before it. At the coming of the sunbeam, the multitude of worshippers, men and women together, rose from the marble pavement whereon they had been kneeling in prayer. Casting off the dark cloaks which covered their white robes, they turned, extending their arms toward the east, and cried in one accord, "Hail to thee, O Sun, bringer of all good things! Hail to thee, new-born child of God!" Now the light grew fast, and soon the city appeared, rising white and beautiful from its veil of mist. And as the glory of the daylight fell upon it, other priests who stood by the altar uttered prayers appointed to be offered upon the day of the beginning of the rising of waters. To the people of the heart the occasion was a great one, seeing that but little rain falls in their country. Thus they depended for a bountiful harvest upon the inundation of the island, and of the low shores that lay around the lake, by its waters swollen with the melted snow of the great mountains on the mainland. When the waters retreated, then they planted their grain in rich land made fertile by the mud, without labour to themselves, whence before the lake rose again they gathered their corn and other crops. After they had ended their praying, and gifts of fresh flowers had been laid upon the altar by beautiful children chosen for that purpose, Tikal blessed the multitude as high priest, and the simple ceremony came to an end. Then Mattai rose to speak, telling the people all the things that had happened, or so much of them as it was expedient that they should know. He told them of the death of Zibalbay, of the setting of the last talisman, the symbol, and of the writing that was found therein, which he read aloud to them amidst a dead silence. Then he told them how the Lady Maya and the white man had consented to be married in obedience to the voice of the oracle, and lastly how she, the Lady Maya, had desired that her cousin Tikal should continue to be /cacique/ of the City of the Heart, that she might have more leisure to attend upon her heaven-sent husband, and to be at rest until that child was become a man, whose wisdom and power should make them even greater than their forefathers had been. When he had finished his address, there was much applause with other expressions of joy, and a spokesman from among the people asked when the marriage of the white man, son of the sea, to the Lady Maya would take place. This question she answered in person, saying modestly that her lord's will was that it should take place that very night in the banqueting hall of the palace, and that a great feast should be celebrated in honour of the event. After this the talking came to an end, Tikal having said no word, good or bad, beyond such as the duties of his office required, and according to the custom of the country, many people, noble and simple, came forward to congratulate her who was about to be made a bride. Weary of watching them and of hearing their pretty speeches, I took advantage of the escort of a friendly noble and went to see the ceremony of the closing of the floodgate, a huge block of marble that slid down a groove into a niche prepared to receive it, where it was fastened with great bars of copper and sealed by certain officers. Although, so I was told, the rising water would not reach it for another 8 or 10 days. Even though the flood should prove to be a low one, it was death to break those seals for a space of 4 full months, and during all this time any who would leave the city must do so by means of ladders reaching from the wall to little wooden jetties where boats were moored. Afterwards we walked round the walls and through some of the main streets, and I marvelled at the greatness of this half-deserted place, for the most of it was in ruins, and at the many strange sights that I saw there. Indeed, I think that Mexico, in the time of Montezuma, my forefather, was not more powerful or populous than this town must have been in the days of its prosperity. About midday I returned to the apartments that had been assigned to me in the palace, and hearing that the señora was still in attendance upon Lady Maya, I ate my dinner alone with such appetite as I could find, and lay down to sleep a while. I was awakened from my rest by the señor, who arrived looking as merry as he used to before ever Molas came to lead us to the old Indian doctor and his daughter, and full of talk about the preparations for his wedding that night. I listened to all he had to say and strove earnestly to fall into his mood, but as I suppose without effect, for in the end he fell into mine, which was but a sad one, and began to talk regretfully of the past and doubtfully of the future. Now I did my best to cheer him, but with little avail, for he shook his head and said, "Indian as she is, I love Maya, and no other woman has been or can be so much to me. Yet I am afraid, Ignatio, for this marriage is ill omened, and I pray that what was begun in trickery may not end in desolation. Also the future is black both for you and for me. You came here for a certain purpose, and will desire to leave again to follow your purpose. Nor, although I take the lady to wife, do I wish to spend my days in the City of the Heart. Still, it would seem that, unless we can escape, this is what we must do." "Let us hope that we shall be able to escape," I answered. "I doubt it," he said, "for already I have discovered that, though we be treated with all honour, yet we shall be closely watched, or at least I shall, for certain reasons. Still, come what may, I trust that this marriage will make no breach in our friendship, Ignatio." "I do not know, señor," I answered, "though I think that for weeks its shadow has lain between us, and I fear lest that shadow should deepen. Also, it has been fated that women and their loves should come between me, my ambitions, and my friends. From the moment that my eyes fell upon the Lady Maya, bound to the altar in the chapel of the hacienda, I felt that her great beauty would bring trouble upon us, and it would seem that my heart did not lie to me. Now, under her guidance, we have entered upon a dark and doubtful path, whereof no man can see the end." "Yes," he answered, "but we took that path in order to save our lives. She took it not to save her life, on which I think she sets little store, but to win a husband whom she desires. For my part, I hold that it would have been better for us to die, if God so willed it, than to live on with hearts fouled by deceit, seeing that in the end die we must, but no years of added life can wear away that stain. Well, this must seem sad to talk to the ears of a bridegroom. Forget it, friend, and rest awhile that you may do credit to the marriage feast." Without answering, the señor lay down upon the bed, where he remained, whether sleeping or awake I do not know, till the hour of sunset, when he was aroused by the arrival of several lords and attendants who came to lead him to the bath. On his return, other messengers entered, bearing magnificent robes and jewels, the gift of the Lady Maya, to be worn by him and by me at the ceremony. Then barbers, having trimmed and scented his fair hair and beard according to the fashions of this people, he was decked out like a victim for the sacrifice. So soon as all was prepared, the doors were flung wide, and 6 officers of the palace came through them, bearing wands of office in their hands, accompanied by a troop of singing girls, chosen for their loveliness, which, to speak truth, was not small. In the midst of these officers and ladies the señor was placed, and, followed by myself, who walked behind with a heavy heart, he set out for the banqueting hall. As we reached it, the doors were thrown open, and the singers set up a love song pretty enough, but so foolish that I have forgotten it. We passed the threshold, and found that the great hall was crowded with guests, arrayed in their most brilliant attire, whereon the lamplight shone bravely. Through this company we walked till we reached an open space at the far end of the hall, around which, in a semicircle, sat the members of the Council of the Heart, Tikal and his wife being placed in the centre of them, having Mattai on their right, and on their left the old priest Dimas, the foster brother of Zibalbay, who had administered the oath to us. As we advanced, with one exception, all the council rose and bowed to the señor. That exception was Tikal, who stood straight before him and did not move. Scarcely had they resumed their seats when the sound of singing was heard again, mingled with that of music, and far away at the foot of the long hall appeared a band of musicians playing upon pipes of reeds, clad in the royal livery of green and crowned with oak leaves. After the musicians marched, or rather danced, a number of young girls, robed in white only, and carrying white lilies in their hands, which they threw upon the floor to be trodden by the feet of the bride. Next came Maya herself, a sight of beauty such as stirred even my cold heart, and caused me to think more gently of the señor, who had become party to a trick to win her. She also was arrayed in white, embroidered with gold, and having the symbol of the heart blazoned on her breast. About her waist and neck were a girdle and collar of priceless emeralds. On her head was set a tiara of perfect pearls, taken in past ages from the shellfish of the lake, and round her wrists and ankles were bangles of dead gold. Her waving hair hung loose almost to her sandalled feet, and in her hand, as token of her rank, she bore a little golden sceptre, having at one end a great pearl and at the other a heart-shaped emerald. On she came, or rather floated, her delicate head held high, and so strange and beautiful was the aspect of her face that for my part, from the instant that I beheld it till she stood before me by the bridegroom, I seemed to see naught else. It was very pale and somewhat set. Indeed, at that moment Maya looked more like a white woman than one of Indian blood, and her curved lips were parted as though they waited for some forgotten words to pass them. Her deep blue eyes also were set wide, and beneath the shadow of their lashes seemed full of mystery and wonder, like the eyes of one who walks in her sleep and beholds things invisible to the waking sight. Presently they fell upon the eyes of the señor, and of a sudden grew human, while the red blood mantled on her breast and arms and brow. Then for me the spell was broken. I glanced at Tikal and saw that on his face was the same look with which he had greeted Maya when on the night of his own wedding feast he beheld her whom he believed to be dead, standing before him, clothed in life and beauty. Eagerly despairing he watched her, and I noticed that tears stood in his angry eyes, and that a gust of jealous rage shook him from head to foot when he saw her flush with joy at the sight of the white rival. From Tikal my glance travelled to the dark beauty at his side, Nahua, his wife, and I became aware that in this instant she grew certain of what perhaps before she only guessed, that in his heart her husband loathed her as with all his soul and strength he loved the affianced of his youth, who stood before him the bride of another man. Doubt, fear, rage looked out and turned from her ominous eyes as the knowledge went home, to be succeeded by a possessing misery, the misery of one who knows that all which makes life good to her is for ever lost. Then, pressing her hands to her heart for a moment, she turned aside to hide her shame and wretchedness, and when she looked up again her face was calm as the face of a statue, but on it was frozen a mask of unchanging hate, hate of the innocent woman who had robbed her. Now the bridegroom and the bride stood together in the open space surrounded by the half circle of the Council of the Heart, among whom I was given a seat, while behind them were arranged the musicians of singing girls, and behind these again pressed the glittering audience of married guests. When all were in their places, a herald rose and cried out the names and titles of the pair, reciting briefly that they were to be wed by the direct command of the guardian god of the city, by the wish of the Council of the Heart, and because of the love that they bore one another. Next, reading from a written roll, he published the text of the agreement whereby Maya renounced her right as ruler in favour of her cousin Tikal, and I noticed that this agreement was received by the company in cold silence, and with some few expressions of disapproval. Lastly, from another roll, he read the list of the honours, prerogatives, offices, wealth, houses, and servants, which were thereby assigned to the Lady Maya and her consort, and also to myself, their friend, for the maintenance of their rank and dignity, and of my comfort. Having finished this task, he asked the señor and Maya whether they had heard all that he had uttered by command of the council, and if so, whether they approved thereof. They bowed their heads in assent, whereupon the herald turned and, addressing Tikal by all his titles, called upon him in virtue of his priestly office and of his position as chief of the state to make these two one in the face of the people, according to the ancient custom of the land. Tikal heard him and rose from his seat as though to commence the service, then sank down again, saying, "Seek some other priest, herald, for this thing I will not do." End of chapter 21. Heart of the World by H. Rider Haggard. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 22. Mattai prophesies evil. At Tikal's words the company murmured in astonishment, and Mattai, bending forward, began to whisper in his ear. Tikal listened for a moment, then turned upon him fiercely and said aloud, so that all could hear him, "I tell you, Mattai, that I will be no party to this iniquity. Has such a thing been heard of before, that the Lady of the Heart, the highest lady in the land, should be given in marriage to a stranger who, like some lost dog, has wandered to our gate?" "The prophecy," began Mattai, "the prophecy! I put no faith in prophecies. Why should I obey a prophecy written now? When or by whom, I do not know. This lady was my affianced bride, and now I am asked to unite her to a nameless man who is not even of our blood or faith. Well, I will not." "Surely, lord, you blaspheme," answered Mattai, growing wrath, "seeing that it is not for the high priest to speak against the oracle of the god. Also," he added with meaning, "what can it be to you, who are not 10 days wed to the lady at your side, that she, to whom once you were affianced, should choose another as her husband?" "What is it to me?" said Tikal furiously. "If you desire to know, I will tell you. It is everything. How did I come to break my troth, and to take your daughter as a wife? Through you, Mattai, through you, the liar and false prophet. Did you not swear to me that Maya was dead yonder in the wilderness? And did you not, to satisfy your own ambitions, force me to take your daughter to wife? Aye, and is not this marriage between the Lady of the Heart and the white man a plot of yours devised for the furthering of your ends?" Now, while we all stood astonished, of a sudden Nahua, who hitherto had listened in stony silence, rose and said, "The Lord Tikal, my husband, forgets that common courtesy should protect even an unwelcome wife from public insult." Then she turned and left the hall by the door which was behind her. A murmur of pity for the lady and indignation at the man ran through the company. As it died away, Tikal said, "Evil will come of this night's work, and in it I will have no hand. Do what you will, and abide the issue." And before any could speak in answer, he also had left the hall, followed by his guards. For a while there was silence. Then men began to talk confusedly, and some of the members of the Brotherhood of the Heart, rising from their chairs, took hurried counsel together. At length they reseated themselves, and, holding up his hand to secure silence, Mattai spoke thus: "Forgive me," he said, addressing the audience, "if my words seem few and rough, but it is hard for me to be calm in face of the open insult which has been put upon my daughter and myself before you all. I will not stoop to answer the charges that the Lord Tikal has brought against me in his rage. Surely some evil power must have afflicted him with madness, that, forgetting his honour as a man and his duty as a prince and priest, he should dare to utter such calumnies against the God we worship, the white man whom the God has chosen to be husband to the Lady Maya, and myself, the keeper of the sanctuary. There were many among you who held me foolish when, after much prayer and thought to further what I believed to be the true interests of the whole people, I gave my voice in favour of the lifting up of Tikal to fill the place in honour of Cacique, in room of our late Prince Zibalbay, whom we thought dead with his daughter in the wilderness. Today I see that they were right, and that I was foolish indeed. But enough of regrets and bitter talk that make ill music at a marriage feast. Tikal, the head of our hierarchy, has gone, but other priests are left, nor is his will the will of the council or of the people of the heart for whom the council speaks. Their will is that this marriage should go forward, and Demas, my brother, as the oldest among us, I call upon you to celebrate it." Now the company shouted in applause, for they were set upon this strange union of a white man with their lady, if only because it was a new thing and touched their imagination. Also, even those of them who were of his party were wrath with Tikal on account of his ill behaviour and the cruel affront that he had offered to his new-made wife. So soon as the tumult had died away, the old priest Demas rose, and taking the hands of Maya and the señor, he joined them and said a very touching and beautiful prayer over them, blessing them and entreating the spirit, Heart of Heaven, and other gods to give them increase and to make them happy in mutual love. Lastly, he laid a white silken cloth which had been prepared upon their heads as they knelt before him, and, loosening the emerald girdle from about the waist of the bride, he took her right hand and placed it upon the arm of the señor. Then he bound the girdle round the waist and arm, buckled it, and in a few solemn words declared these twain to be man and wife in the face of heaven and earth, till death undid them. Now the cloth was lifted and the girdle loosed, and standing upon their feet, the new wed pair kissed each other before the people. A shout of joy went up that shook the panelled roof, and one by one, in order of their rank, the guests pressed forward to wish happiness to the bride and bridegroom, most of them bringing some costly and beautiful gift, which they gave into the charge of the waiting ladies. Last of all came the old priest Demas, and said, "Sweet bride, the gift that I am commanded by the council to make to you, though of little value in itself, is yet one of the most precious to be found within the walls of this ancient city, being nothing less than the holy symbol of the all-seeing eye of the heart of heaven, which through you men behold today for the first time for many generations. Wear it always, lady, and remember that though this jewel has no sight, yet that eye whereof it is a token, from hour to hour reads your most secret soul and purpose. Make your thoughts then as fair as your body, and let your breast harbour neither guile nor evil, for of all these things in a day to come you must surely give account." As he spoke, he drew from the case that hid it nothing less than that awful eye which we had seen within the hollow of the heart, when with unhallowed hands we robbed it, substituting the false for the true. Now it had been set in a band of gold and hung to a golden chain, which he placed about the neck of the bride, so that the red and cruel-looking gem lay gleaming on her naked breast. Maya bowed and muttered some word of thanks, but I saw that her spirit failed her at the touch of the ominous thing, for she turned faint and would have fallen had not her husband caught her by the arm. While the señor and his wife were receiving gifts and listening to pretty speeches, a number of attendants had brought tables laden with every sort of food from behind the pillars where they had been prepared, and at a signal the feast began. It was long and joyous, though joy seemed to have faded from the face of Maya, who sat neither eating nor drinking, but from time to time lifting the red eye from her breast as though it scorched her skin. At length she rose, and, accompanied by her husband, walked bowing down the hall to the courtyard, where bearers waited for them with carrying chairs. In these they seated themselves, and a procession having been formed, very long and splendid, though I will not stay to describe it, we started to march round the great square to the sound of music and singing, our path being lit by the light of the moon and with hundreds of torches. Here in this square we gathered all the population of the City of the Heart, men, women, and children, to greet the bride, each of them bearing flowers and a flaming torch, and never have I seen any sight more beautiful than this of their welcome. The circuit of the square being accomplished, the procession halted at the palace gates, and many hands were stretched out to help the bride and bridegroom from their litters. It was at this moment that I, who was standing near, felt a man wrapped in a large feather cloak push past me, and saw that he held something which gleamed like a knife. By instinct, as it were, I cried, "Beware, my friend," in Spanish, and in so piercing a voice that it caught the señor's ear. He swung round, for already he was standing on his feet, and as he turned, the man in the cloak rushed at him and stabbed with the knife. But being warned, the señor was too quick for him. Springing to one side with the same movement, he dealt his would-be murderer a great buffet that caused him to drop the dagger and sent him staggering to the dense shadow of the archway. For some seconds no one seemed to understand what had happened. When they did and began to search for the man, he was not found. Who he was, or why he had attempted this cowardly deed, was never discovered. But for my part, I had little doubt that either Tikal himself or some creature of his was wrapped in the dark feathered cloak, and sought thus to rid him of his rival. Indeed, as time went on, this belief took firm hold of the mind of the people, and was one of the causes that led to the snapping of Tikal's power and popularity. Very hastily the señor assured the lords in attendance who crowded round him that he had received no manner of hurt. Then, after speaking a few brief words of thanks, he withdrew into the palace with his wife, and I saw him no more that night. The day of this marriage was to me the beginning of the longest and most weary year that ever I had spent in long, weary life. Very soon I understood how it came about that Maya had learned to hate the City of the Heart in which she was born, its people and its ways, and ardently to desire a new life in new lands. Here there was no change and little work. Here, enervated by a cloying luxury, the poor remnant of a great civilization rotted slowly to its fall, and none lifted a hand to save it. Since men must do something, the priests and nobles plotted for place and power indeed, and the common people listlessly followed this trade or that, providing food and raiment for the community, not for themselves. But there was little heart in what they did, and in it they took no pleasure. Basking in an eternal sunshine, they loitered from the cradle to the grave, hoping nothing, suffering nothing, fearing nothing, content to feast and make love amid their crumbling palaces, and, when they were weary, to sleep till it was time to feast and love again, satisfying their souls the while with the husks of a faith whereof they had lost the meaning. Such were the people of whom Zibalbay hoped to fashion a race of conquerors. Still, to this life they were born, and it became them. Indeed, they could have endured no other, for the breath of hardship must have melted them away, as my Indian forefathers melted beneath the iron rule of the Spaniard. To me it was daily torment. Often I have beheld some wild creature pine and die in its prison, though food was given to it in greater abundance than it could find in its native woods, and like that wild creature was I in this soft City of the Heart. The wealth I came to seek was round me in abundance, useless and unproductive as the dead hands that had stored it, and yonder in Mexico were men who, by aid of that wealth, might become free and great. Alas, I could not bring them together. I could not even escape from my gaol, for my every movement was watched. Yet I would have tried so to do had it not been for the señor who, when I spoke of it, said I should be no true friend if I went and left him alone in this house of strangers. Indeed, his plight was worse than mine, for he too soon grew utterly weary of this dreadful city of eternal summer, and of everything in it except his wife. For whole hours we would sit gazing on the wide waters of the lake, and make plan after plan whereby we might gain the mountains and freedom, only to abandon each in turn, for they were hopeless. Day and night he was watched, since here alone this people forgot to be indolent. They knew that their race was dying, and, lifting no hand to save themselves, they preferred to pin their faith upon the prophecy which promised that from this white man should spring a saviour. Meanwhile, false though it may have been, the prophecy, or one part of it, was in the way of fulfilment, which in itself was a wonder to this people, among whom the births of children were so rare. At length that child was born, a son, and the rejoicing knew no bounds. Strangely enough, upon the same day Nahua also gave birth to a son, and great was her anger when she learned that it was not on her account or that of her offspring that the people were so glad. Within a few days of the señor's marriage we heard that Mattai had been seized with sickness, a kind of palsy, together with a leprous condition of the arms that baffled all skill. For months he lay in his house, growing gradually worse, so said the physicians. One night, I remember that it was 3 days previous to the birth of Maya's child, he appeared before Maya, the señor, and myself, as we sat together in the palace, looking out upon the moonlit garden. At first we did not know him, for never before had I seen a sight so dreadful. His body was bloated, one arm, his left, was swathed in bandages, his head shook incessantly, and the leprosy had seized his face, which was of a livid hue. "Do not shrink from me," he began in a low and quavering voice, as he gazed upon us with his whitening eyes. "Surely you should not shrink, seeing that all of you are partners in the crime that has made of me the loathsome thing I am. Ay, deny it if you will, but I know it. The vengeance of the god has fallen upon me, his false servant, and it has fallen justly. Moreover, be assured that on you also shall that vengeance fall, for the eye has seen, the mouth has told, and the heart has thought upon your doom. Look upon me, and learn how rich are the wages of him who works iniquity, and by my suffering strive to count the measure of your own. Perchance your cup is not yet full, perchance you have still greater sins to work, but vengeance shall come. I tell you that vengeance shall come here and hereafter. I did this thing for my daughter's sake, yes, for love of her, my only child. She was ambitious, and she desired this man, and I thought to assure greatness to her and to her children after her. But see how her wine has turned to vinegar, and her pleasant fruit to ashes. Her husband hates her with an ever-growing hate. Now they scarcely speak, only to shower bitter words upon each other's head. More, not for long will Tikal be /cacique/ of this city of the heart, for his jealous rage has soured all his mind. His deeds are deeds of oppression and injustice. Already he is detested by the people, and even those who loved him turn from him and plot against him. Do you know what they plot? They plot to make that child that shall be born to you, Maya, /cacique/ in his room, and to set up you and your outland husband as regents till it shall be of an age to govern. Oh, you have planned cunningly, and things look well for you, but I say that they shall not prosper. The curse is on you, Ignacio, Lord of the Heart, for all your high-built hopes shall fall like rotted roof, and never shall the eagles of that empire you have dreamed be bordered on your banners. Slaves are the people you have toiled for, and slaves they shall remain, for by the crime to which you gave consent, Ignacio, you have riveted their fetters. The curse is on your child, Maya. Never shall it live to become a man. The curse is on your husband. His hair shall not grow grey. But heaviest of all, the curse rests upon you, false lady of the heart, you whose life is one long lie, you who forsook your faith and broke your oath, you who turned from your people and from the law of your high and ancient house, that you might win a wandering white man to your arms. Woman, we shall meet no more, but in the hour of your last misery, and in the long, long ages of the eternal punishment, remember the words that I speak to you today." Then, shaking his withered arm in our faces, Mattai turned and limped from the chamber. He went, and we sat gazing at each other in horror. For though we none of us had any faith in the God he worshipped, in our hearts we felt that this man spoke truth, and that evil would overtake us. For a moment Maya hid her face in her hands and wept. Then she sprang up. A fire in her eyes had dried her tears. "So let it be," she cried. "I care nothing. At least I won you, my love, and for some months, through all our troubles, I have been most happy at your side, and come good, come ill, nothing can rob me of my memories. But for you I fear, husband, I fear for you." Then her passion passed. She flung herself into his arms and again began to weep. In due course the child was born, a beautiful boy, almost white in colour, with his mother's star-like eyes, and on the same night we learned that Mattai had died in much torment, and that Nahua was delivered of a son. 18 days went by, and Maya, new risen from her bed, was seated with her husband and myself, while behind us stood a waiting lady, holding the sleeping infant in her arms, when it was announced to us that an embassy of great lords of the council sought speech with her. Presently they entered, and the spokesman, the Lord Dimas, bowed before her and set out his mission, saying: "We have come to you, Lady of the Heart, on behalf of the Council and of the people, to rejoice with you in your great happiness, and to lay certain matters of the state before you. For some months the people have grown weary of the oppression and cruelties of Tikal, who, in defiance of the laws of the land, has put many to death on suspicion of their being concerned in plots against his power. Further, but yesterday it came to the ears of the Council, through the confession of one whom he had employed to execute his wickedness, that a plan was laid to murder your husband, your child, and the Lord Ignacio here." "Indeed," said Maya. "And why was my name omitted from this list?" "Lady, we do not know," he answered, "but it seems that the assassins had orders to take you living and to hide you away in a secret part of Tikal's house." Now the señor sprang to his feet and swore a great oath to be avenged upon Tikal. "Nay, lord," said Dimas, "his person is holy and must not be touched. nor need you have any further fear of him, for those whom he corrupted await their trial, and he himself is watched by day and night. Also, not for long will Tikal remain cacique of the City of the Heart, for the council have met in secret session to which you were not summoned, and have decreed that he shall be deposed because of his iniquities, and in accordance with the desire of the people." "Can a cacique be deposed?" asked Maya. "Yes, lady, if he has broken the law. For was not your father to be deposed for this same reason? Also, Tikal holds his place not by right of birth, but by treaty. You are the true heir to Zibalbay, Lady of the Heart." "It may be so," she answered coldly, "but I have renounced my claim, and I do not desire to go back upon my word." "If you have renounced it," said Dimas, "there is one to whom it passes," and he pointed to the sleeping infant. "Yonder is the child of prophecy, hope of the people, and he it is whom we propose to crown as our ruler, setting you and your husband up to act for him till he reaches his full age." "Nay," said Maya, "for thus shall he become the mark of Tikal's rage, and be put to death, openly or in secret, as it may chance." "Not so, lady, for in that hour when he is proclaimed, Tikal will be taken into safe keeping, where he shall abide for so long as his life lasts." "And when is this to be?" asked the señor. "Tomorrow at noon, upon the pyramid, that the child may be solemnly anointed 3 days hence in the sanctuary on the night of the rising waters." "It is foolish to crown a babe, and neither I nor my husband seek this greatness," said Maya. "If Tikal is to be deposed because of his crimes, let one of the great lords be set in his place until the child is old enough to rule." "Although you and your husband are to command us in the future," answered Dimas sternly, "till then you must obey, lady, for the voice of the council is supreme, and it carries out the will of its founder, an invisible president, the Heart of Heaven. The council has determined that the heaven-sent child, of whom you are the earthly parents, must take his own." "As you will," said Maya with a sigh, and presently they went. That evening the señor and I attended a feast at the house of one of the great nobles, whence we returned somewhat late. Having dismissed those who had escorted us, I walked with him as far as the door of his private chambers, proposing to leave him there, but he bade me enter, for he wished to talk with me about the events of the day and this forthcoming ceremony of the anointing of the child. Accordingly I did so, and passing through the first chamber, we came to the second, beyond which lay his sleeping rooms. Here we halted by the open window, and I approached a lamp, for I wished to smoke and had no light. As I bent over it, something caught my ear, and I listened, since it seemed to me that through the massive doors of the bedchamber I heard the sound of a woman's voice crying for help. Instantly I flung them open and rushed thither by way of an anteroom, calling to the señor as I went. I did not arrive too soon, for in the bedchamber itself a strange sight met my eyes. At the foot of the bed stood a cradle in which lay the child, and near to it 2 women struggled. One of these, in which I knew Nahua, the wife of Tikal, held a copper knife in her hand, and the other, Maya, gripped her round the body and arms from behind, so that, strive as she would, she could not free herself to use it. Still, of the 2 women, Nahua was the heavier and the more strong, and though slowly she dragged the other closer to the cradle. Indeed, as I reached the room, she wrenched her right arm loose and raised it to strike at the infant with the knife. Here the matter ended, for at that moment I caught her round the waist and threw her back so that she fell heavily on the floor, letting drop the knife in her effort to save herself. She sprang to her feet and ran towards the door, there to be met by the señor, who seized her and held her fast. End of chapter 22. Heart of the World by H. Rider Haggard. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 23. Our Flight and How It Ended. "How came this lady here, Maya, and what does she seek?" the señor asked. "I do not know how she came," gasped his wife. "My waiting women were gone, and I had begun to prepare myself for sleep, when, looking in yonder mirror, I saw her behind me, having in her hand a naked knife, and searching the room with her eyes. Presently they fell upon the cradle, and lifting the knife, she took a step towards it. Then I turned and gripped her, holding her as well as I was able, but she was too strong for me, and dragged me forward so that, had it not been for Ignatio, by now she would have made an end of our son." "Is this true?" said the señor to Nahua. "It is true, white man," she answered. "Why do you desire to kill one so innocent?" he asked again. "Is it not natural that I should wish to destroy the child who is to supplant my child, and to break the heart of the woman who has broken my heart?" Nahua answered sullenly. "Amongst many other things I have learned, white man, of that ceremony which is to take place tomorrow, whereat my husband is to be deposed and my child dishonoured, that they may make room for you and for your child, you, the white wanderer, and your son, the heaven-born, the foreordained." "What have we to do with these things, O woman with the heart of a puma?" he asked. "If the Tikal is to be driven from his place, it is because of his crimes, and if you and yours are to be set in it, white man, without doubt it is because of your virtues. And yet, O black-hearted knave that you are, I tell you I know the truth. I know how you forged the writing, setting the false for the true within the holy symbol of the heart. I know also that my father helped you to the deed, for although he is dead, he wrote down the tale before he died, and gave it to me together with the ancient prophecy that you dared to steal from the holy sanctuary. Yes, I have the proofs, and when needful I will show them. I did not come here to do murder, at least not upon the infant, but the sight of it sleeping in its cradle overcame me, and of a sudden I determined to wreak my wrongs upon it and upon its mother. In this I have failed, but when I denounce you to the council, then I shall not fail. Then you will be known for what you are, and die the death that you deserve." "It comes into my mind, husband," said Maya coldly, "that if we would save our own lives, we must rob this woman of hers. Such a doom she has richly earned, nor will any blame us when they learn what was her errand here." Now when she heard these words, Nahua struggled in the señor's grasp, and opened her mouth as though to scream. "Be silent," he said, "if you wish to keep your soul in you. Ignatio, close the doors and give me yonder shawl." I did so, and with the shawl we bound Nahua's arms behind her, fastening it over her mouth so that she could make no sound. Then we took a leather girdle and strapped it about her knees, so that she could not move, but lay helpless on the floor, glaring at us with fierce eyes. "Now let us take counsel," I said. "Yes," answered the señor, "let us take counsel, for we need it. One of two things we must do: kill that woman, or fly the city, for if she leaves this place alive, we are certainly doomed to death before the altar, I and the child also." "Fly," said Maya. "How can we fly when I am still weak, and the babe is so young and tender? Should we succeed in escaping from the city and across the lake, certainly we must perish among the snows of the mountains, or in the deserts beyond. Also, we should be missed and overtaken." "Then Nahua must die," said the señor. "Could we not swear her to silence if we released her?" I asked, for I shrank from such a dreadful deed, however just and necessary it might be. "Swear her to silence?" said Maya contemptuously. "As easily might you swear a snake not to use its fangs if one should chance to tread on it. Do you understand that this woman hates me so bitterly, who, as she thinks, has robbed her of her husband's love, that she would gladly die herself, if thereby she could bring about my death and that of those who are dear to me? So soon as she could leave her bed of sickness, she came here to taunt me with the doom she had prepared, knowing that I was alone. Then she saw the child, and so great was her desire for revenge that she could not even wait till the law should wreak it for her. No, the issue is plain. If we cannot fly, either she must die or we must. Is it not so, Ignacio?" "It seems that it is so," I answered sadly, "and yet the thing is awful." "It is awful, but it must be done," said the señor, "and it falls on me to do it for the sake of my wife and child. Alas, that I was ever born, that I should live to stand face to face with such necessity. Could not another hand be found? No, for then we should confess ourselves as murderers. Give me the knife. Nay, my hands will serve, and this end will seem more natural, for I can say that when I found her in the act of murder, I seized her and killed her suddenly by my strength alone, not meaning it in my wrath." Now he stepped to where Nahua lay and knelt beside her, and we two drew away sick at heart and hid our faces in our hands. Presently he was with us again. "Is it done?" asked Maya hoarsely. "No, nor will by me," he answered in a fierce voice. "Sooner would I choke the breath out of my own body than strangle this defenceless woman, cruel-hearted, murderous though she is. If she is to be killed, some other man must do the deed." "Then it will remain undone," said Maya. "Now, since we have thus determined, let us think of flight, for the night draws on, and in flight is our only hope." "What then is to be done with this woman?" I asked. "We cannot take her with us." "No, but we can leave her here gagged and bound till they chance to find her," answered the señor. "Hearken, Nahua, we spare you, and to do it go forth to our own deaths. May your fierce heart learn a lesson of mercy from the deed. Farewell." 2 hours had gone by, and 3 figures wrapped in rough /serapes, such as the common people wear, one of whom, a woman, carried an infant in her arms, might have been seen cautiously descending the city wall by means of a wooden ladder that ran from its summit to a jetty built upon the piers at the foot of it, which was used as a mooring place for boats during the months of inundation. As was common at this season of the year, the lake was already rising, and floating in the shallow water at the end of the jetty lay a pleasure skiff, which the señor and I, accustomed to use for the purposes of fishing whenever we could escape for a few hours from our wearisome life in the city. Into the skiff we entered, and having hoisted the sail, set our course by the stars, steering for that village whence a year before we had embarked for the City of the Heart. The wind being favourable to us, our progress was rapid, and by the first grey light of dawn we caught sight of the village not a mile away. Here, however, we did not dare to land, for we should be seen and recognised. Therefore we beached our boat behind the shelter of some dwarf water palms 3 furlongs or more below the village, and having hidden it as well as we were able, set out at once towards the mountains. Passing round the back of the village without being seen, for as yet folk were scarcely astir, we began our dreadful journey. For a while Maya bore up well, but as the heat of the day increased, she showed signs of tiring, which was little to be wondered at, seeing that she carried in her arms a child not 3 weeks old. At midday we halted that she might rest, hiding ourselves beneath a tree by the banks of a brook, and eating such food as we had brought with us. In the early afternoon we started on again, and for the rest of that dreary day struggled forwards as best we could, the señor and I carrying the infant alternately, in addition to our other burdens. At length the evening fell, and we camped for the night, if camping it can be called, to sleep beneath the shadow of a cedar tree, without fire and with little food, having no covering except our serapes. Towards morning the air grew cold, for already we were at some height above the lake, and the tender infant began to wail piteously, a wail that wrung our hearts. Still we rose with the sun and went on our way, for it seemed that there was nothing else to do. Throughout that day, with ever wearying footsteps, we journeyed, till at sunset we reached the snow line and saw before us the hunter's rest house where we had slept when first we entered the country of the Heart. "Let us go in," said Maya, "and find food and shelter for the night." Now our plan had been to avoid this house and gain the pass, where we proposed to stay till daybreak, and then to travel down the mountain slopes into the wilderness. "If we enter there, Maya, we shall be trapped," said the señor. "Our only safety lies in travelling through the pass before we are overtaken, for it is against the law that any of your people should follow us into the wilderness." "If we do not enter, my child will die in the cold," she answered. "You were too tender to secure our safety by putting that would-be murderess to death. Have you, then, the heart, husband, to kill your own child?" Now at these words I saw the señor's eyes fill with tears, but he said only, "Be it as you will." By now, indeed, we understood, all 3 of us, that if we would save our lives, must suffer the child to die, and however great our necessity, this we could not do. So we went up to the house and entered, and there by the fire sat the same man and his wife, whom we had found in this room a year ago. "Who are you?" he cried, springing up. "Pardon, lady, but in that garb I did not know you." "It is best that you should not know us," said Maya. "We are wanderers who have lost their way out hunting. Give us food, as you are bound to do." Then the man and his wife, who were kindly people, made obeisance to us, and set of the best they had before us. We ate, and after eating slept, for we were very weary, bidding the man watch and tell us if he saw any stranger approaching the house. Before dawn he woke us, and we rose. A little later he came into my room and told me that a large body of men were in sight of the house. Then I knew that it was finished, and called the others. "Now there are 3 things that we can do," I said: "fly towards the pass, defend this house, or surrender ourselves." "There is no time to fly," answered the señor. "Therefore it is my counsel that we fight." "Is it your counsel that 2 men armed with bows, for our firearms had been taken from us on the pyramid, and we had never been able to recover them, should engage with 50? Well, friend, we can try it if you wish, and perhaps it will be as good a way of meeting our deaths as any other." "This is folly," broke in Maya. "There is but one thing to do: yield ourselves and trust to fortune, if indeed fortune has any good in store for us. Only I wish that we had done it before we undertook this weary journey." As she spoke, by the light of the rising sun we saw a great number of men forming a circle round the house. With them were several captains and lords, and among them I recognized Demas and Tikal. "Let us put a bold face on it," said Maya. So we opened the door, walked out, and came into the presence of Tikal, Demas, and the other lords. "Whom do you seek that you come with an armed force?" asked Maya. "Whom should I seek but your fair self, cousin?" answered Tikal, and I saw that his eye was wild as though with drink. "If Nahua, my wife, had had her way, she would have let you go, for she desires to see the last of you. But her will is not my will, nor her desire my desire, and as it chances we have come up with you in time." Maya turned from him and with a scornful gesture addressed herself to Demas, saying, "Tell us of what we are charged, that you follow us as though we were evildoers." "Lady," the old priest answered gravely, "it would seem that you have earned this name, you and your companions together. Listen. 2 days since you were missing, and the Lady Nahua was also missing. Search was made, and at last your private apartments were broken open, and there she was discovered, bound and gagged. From her we learned the secret of your flight, and followed after you." "Did she then tell you why we fled?" asked Maya. "Did she tell you that she crept to my chamber like a thief in the night, and there was found in the act of doing murder on my child?" "No, lady, she told us nothing of this. Indeed, her manner was strange, for as soon as she was recovered somewhat, she took back her words and said that she knew naught of you or your plans, and that she had fled. We should do well to let you go before worse things happen. But knowing that for all this she had reasons easy to be guessed, we followed and found you, and now we arrest you to answer before the Council for your great sins, in that you have broken your solemn oaths by attempting to leave the land without the consent of the Council, and have added to your crimes by taking with you this child, the heaven-sent deliverer on whom rest the hopes of our race." "If we have broken our oaths," said Maya, "we broke them to save our lives. Were we then to stop in the city till the knife of the assassin found us out? On the very night of my marriage a murderer was set upon my husband, and perhaps one stands there," and she pointed to Tikal, "who could tell us who he was and whence he came. 3 days ago another murderer sought the life of our child, and that murderer the wife of the Lord Tikal. Is it then a sin that we should take from the land one whose life is not safe within it?" "All these matters you can lay before the Council, lady," answered Demas, "and if Nahua is what you say, without a doubt she must suffer for her crime. Yet her evil doing cannot pay for yours, for when you found yourself in danger you should have claimed protection from those who could give it, and not have taken yourselves to flight like thieves in terror of the watch. Come, enter the litter that is prepared for you, and let us be going." "As you will," she said, "but one thing I pray of you. Let this man, my cousin, Tikal, the /cacique, may be kept away from me, for the sight of him is hateful to me, seeing that, not content with plotting to kill my husband and my child, he puts me to shame continually by the offer of his love." "It shall be as you wish, lady. Your husband and your friend can travel by your side, and guards shall surround your litter to see that none molest you." Then we started. Of our journey back there is nothing to tell, unless it is to say that after its own fashion it was even more wretched than that which we had just accomplished. Then, indeed, we were footsore, hungry, and racked with fears, but at least the hope of freedom shone before us like a guiding star, whereas now, although we travelled in comfort, it was to find shame, exposure, and death awaiting us at last. For my part, indeed, this thought did not move me very much, seeing that hope had left me, and without hope I no longer wished to live. You, my friend, for whom I write this history, may think my saying strange, but had you stood where I stood that day, you would not wonder at it. Even now I sometimes dream that I am back in the city of the heart, and wake cold with fear as a man wakes from some haunted sleep. True, there I had place and power and luxury, but oh, sooner would I have earned my livelihood herding cattle in the wilderness than fret away my life within that golden cage. What to me were the banquets and their empty pleasures, or their petty strivings for rank and title? To me, who all my days had followed the star of my high aim, that star which was now setting. Maya and the señor had each other and their child to console them, but I had nothing except such friendship as they chose to spare me. The memory of my many failures, the clinging bitterness of conscience, the fear of vengeance to be wreaked, and the hope of peace beyond the end. Therefore I, an outworn and disappointed man, was prepared to welcome the doom that awaited me, but how would it be with the others who were still full of love and youth? Late that night we reached the city, and were led, not to the palace where we lived, but towards the enclosure of the pyramid. "How is this?" asked Maya of the captain of the guard. "Our road lies yonder." "No, lady," he answered, "my orders are to take you up the stairway of the pyramid." Now Maya pressed her face against the face of her child and sobbed, for she knew that once more we must inhabit the darksome vault where her father had been taken to die. They led us up the stair and down the narrow way till we stood in the lamplit hall and heard our prison gates clash behind us. Then they gave us food and let us alone. Never did I pass a more evil night, for strive as I would to win it, sleep fled from me, and I tossed upon my couch, wondering where my bed would be on the morrow, after we had stood before the council of the sanctuary of the heart of Nahua had borne witness against us. I remembered that shaft before the altar, and seemed to hear the murmur of the water in its depths. Well, as I have said, I did not fear to die, for God is merciful to sinners, but oh, it was dreadful to meet this liar's doom, and to remember that it was I who brought the señor here to share it. As I mused thus, even through the massive walls of the vault I heard a woman scream, and springing from my bed I ran into the central hall where the lamps burned always. Here I met Maya, clad in her night dress only, and speeding down the hall, her wide eyes filled with terror. "What has happened?" I said, stopping her as I spoke. The señor came up. "Oh, I have dreamed," she gasped. "I have dreamed a fearful dream. I dreamed that my father came to me, and I cannot tell it. The child," and she broke down utterly and could say no more. "This place is full of evil memories, and her strength is shattered," said the señor when we had calmed her somewhat. "Come back, wife, and sleep." "Sleep," she answered. "I do not think I shall ever sleep again. And yet, unless I sleep, I shall go mad. Oh, that vision! Truly the curse of Mattai has taken hold of me." Some few hours later we met again in the great hall, but Maya said nothing of her dream, nor did I ask her to tell it, though I could see from her face that it was not forgotten. We ate, or made pretence to eat, and sat for a while in silence, till at length the gates opened, and through them came Dimas and some companion priests. Bidding these to stand back, he advanced alone and greeted us kindly. "I am grieved," he said, "that you should again be called upon to occupy this gloomy lodging, but I had no choice in the matter, since I am but the servant of the council, and its commands were strict. It was feared lest the infant might be spirited away were you left at liberty." "It will soon be spirited away indeed, Demas," said Maya, "if it be kept here in the darkness. Already the child pines. Within a week he will be dead. Have no fear, lady, your imprisonment is not for long, for this very night, the night of the rising of waters, you will all of you be put upon your trial before the council in the sanctuary, and charged with the crime of attempting to escape the land." "Is there no other charge?" asked Maya. "None, lady, that I have heard of. What other charge should there be?" "And what will be the verdict of the council?" "I cannot say, lady, but I know that none wish to deal harshly with you, and if that charge which you bring against the Lady Nahua can be proved, it will go in your favour. The crime you have attempted is a great one, both in our eyes and still more in the eyes of the people, for now they talk day and night of this deliverer who has been born to them, and they will not easily forgive those who strove to take him from them. Still, I think that upon certain terms the anger of your judges may be appeased." "What terms?" asked Maya. Now Demas hesitated and answered, "By the strict letter of the law. If your offence is proved against you, you are worthy of death, every one, unless you yourself are held inviolate because of your hereditary rank as Lady of the Heart. But it may be that the council will not exact the extreme penalty. It may be that it will satisfy itself by driving out those strangers from our borders instead of driving them from the land of life." "Yet one of them is my husband, Demas." "True, lady, but the child is born." "I cannot be parted from my husband. Better that we should die together than we should be parted. If the people have no need of him, neither have they any need of me. Let us bid them farewell and go free together. I am weary of this land, Demas, for here murder dogs our steps, and I am in terror of my life. I desire nothing from my people save liberty to leave them." "But, lady, your people desire something from you. They desire the child. Of these strangers they would be rid by death or otherwise, and you, though of this I am not sure, they may allow to accompany them, but with your child they will never part, for he is their heaven-sent king, the son of prophecy. It comes to this, then, that if the council should exercise its prerogative of mercy, as it will do if I and my party have sufficient weight, at the best you must choose between the loss of your husband or of your son." Now the face of Maya became drawn with pain, so that she looked as though age had overtaken her. Then she answered, "Go tell those that sent you, Demas, that these are the words of Maya, Lady of the Heart. My child is dear to me, for he is flesh of my flesh. But my husband is yet dearer, for he is both flesh of my flesh and soul of my soul. Therefore, if I must choose between the two, I choose him who is nearest, for I may have another child, but never another husband." End of chapter 23. Heart of the World by H. Rider Haggard. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 24. Nahua bears witness. Some hours passed, and again the gates were opened, and through them came Tikal and a guard of 5 men. The guard he left by the gates, advancing alone to where we were seated near the far end of the hall. "What would you of us?" asked Maya. "Can you not leave me in peace even here in my dungeon?" "I desire to speak with you alone, Maya." "Then, Tikal, I tell you now what I have told you before, that I will not listen to your word alone. If you have anything to say, say it in the presence of my husband and my friend, or go and leave it unsaid." "You speak roughly to one who comes here in the hope of saving the lives of all of you," he answered. "Still, I will bear with you in this, as I have borne with you in much else. Listen. All your crimes are known to me, for Nahua, my wife, has revealed them to me. I know how you and that dead rogue Mattai, on whom the curse of heaven has most justly fallen, forged the prophecy and violated the sanctuary, for I have held the proofs of it in my hand." "Do you know that we did this to save our lives?" asked Maya. "For if we had not done it, Mattai would have murdered us in order that, by removing me, he might assure his daughter in her place." "I do not know why you did it, nor do I care, seeing that nothing can lighten such a crime. But I think that you did it in order that you might win yonder white man as a husband. At the least, the thing is done, and vengeance waits you, vengeance from which there is but one escape." "What escape?" asked Maya quickly, for when she learned that Tikal knew everything, all hope had faded from her heart as from ours. "Maya, 2 people live, and 2 only, who know this tale, Nahua, my wife, and I myself. Till this morning there was but one, for Nahua only told me of it when she found that you had not escaped, and this she has done that she may be rid of you whom she hates as her rival. Therefore it was that she would have held me back from pursuing you, and therefore it is that she will appear before the Council of the Heart this night, so that her evidence may ensure your instant death in the pit of waters. But as it chances, least of anything on the earth do I desire that my eyes should lose sight of you, whom now, as ever, I love better than anything on the earth." Now the señor grew white with rage, and he broke in: "You do well to keep such words to yourself, Tikal, for of this be sure, if you do not, I will add to my crimes, and you shall not leave this place alive. No need to look at your guards. What do I care for your guards, who have but one life to lose? Speak thus again, and before they reach you, you shall be dead." "Let him go on, husband," said Maya. "What can a few insults more or less matter to us now? Continue, most noble Tikal, but for your own sake restrain yourself and say nothing that a husband should not hear." "It is for this reason," he went on, taking no notice of the señor's anger, "that I have come here with a plan to save you all, yes, even this braggart white man who has robbed me of you. If Nahua and I are silent, who will know of your crimes? And if the evidence of them is destroyed before your eyes, who is there that can prove them? Now I will be silent at a price. I will even bring the true tablet of the prophecy and the roll of Mattai's confession, and destroy them with fire before you." "You will be silent," said Maya. "But what of Nahua? Will she be silent also?" Now Tikal's dark face grew evil with some purpose of his own, though whether it were of murder or of what I do not know. "Leave Nahua to me," he said. "Withdraw the charge you made against her of attempting to kill yonder child, and free her thus of the need of appearing this night in the sanctuary. And I swear to you that no word of her dreadful secret shall ever pass her lips. Then you will be tried upon one issue only, that of having broken your oaths by flying the city, a crime that is not beyond forgiveness. You spoke of a price, Tikal. Tell us, what is this price that we must pay? The price is yourself, Maya. Nay, hear me out. And you, white man, keep silent. If you will swear upon the heart to become my wife within 6 months from this day, then I, on my part, will swear that the white man, your husband, who is not your husband, for he won the consent of the council to his marriage by a trick, shall be suffered to escape the land unharmed, taking with him his friend and so much of our treasures and things needful for their journey as he may desire. I will swear also, and by this you may see how deep and honest is my love for you, that your son shall not be deposed of the place and rank which he holds in the eyes of the people as a heaven-sent deliverer whose coming was foretold by prophecy. My child shall give place to yours, Maya. Once before I held out the hand of peace to you, but you refused it and tricked me, and from that refusal has sprung the death of your father and many other sorrows. Do not refuse again, Maya, lest these sorrows should be increased and multiplied upon you and upon us all. It is no strange or unnatural thing I ask of you, that you should wed the man to whom for many years you were affianced, and take your place as the first lady in this city, instead of giving yourself over with your accomplices to the most infamous of deaths. Yet it is most strange and unnatural to call that a wife should be asked to part thus from her husband. But stay, it is for him to speak, not me, for he may be glad to buy safety at this cost. First, what do you say, Ignacio? Tell me, though I fear your answer, for it is easy to guess, seeing that Tikal offers all that you can desire, freedom and treasure, to enable you to execute your plans. It is true, lady, I replied, that he offers me these things, though whether or no he is able to give them I cannot say. And it is true also that I have no wife here whom I must leave, and no prospect save that of a traitor's death. Still, lady, I remember a certain promise that I made to you yonder in the wilderness, when by your courage you saved your husband's life. And I remember also that it was through me that he, my friend, came to visit this accursed city. Therefore I say, let our fate be one fate. Those are very noble words, friend, she said, such as could have come only from your noble heart. Now, husband, do you speak? I have nothing to say, Maya, replied the señor with a laugh, except that I wonder why you waste time which we have to spend happily together in listening to this fellow's insults. If you bid me to go to save you, perhaps I might think about it, but certainly I will not stir one pace from your side to save myself from any death. It seems that I have got my answer, said Tikal. May none of you regret it tonight when you come to look down into the pit of waters. Well, time presses, and I have much to do before we meet again. And he turned to leave us. Now, as he went, despair took hold of Maya. For a moment she struggled with it, and with herself. Then she cried, "Come back, Tikal!" He came and stood before her in cold silence, and she spoke, addressing her husband in a slow voice. You are over hasty. My answer is not yet spoken, husband. Tikal, I accept your offer. Prevent Nahua from giving testimony against us, destroy the evidence she holds, and set these men safe with all that they may desire on the further side of yonder mountains, and within 6 months I will become your wife." Now the señor and I stared at each other aghast. "Are you mad?" he said, "or do you speak so in the hope of saving us?" "Would it be wonderful, husband," she answered, "if I should wish to save myself and my child? That I have loved you and love you, you know, yet is there any love in the grave? While I live, at least I have my memories. If I die, even these may be taken from me. Go back, husband, go back wealthy to your own people and your old life, and choose some other woman to be your companion. Do not forget me, indeed, but let me become as a dream to you, seeing that for all our sakes this is the best. To you also, Ignatio, I say, go. Our fellowship has brought you little luck. May its severing be more fortunate, and may you at last attain your ends. Tikal, give me your hand, and let us swear the oath." He stepped towards her, his eyes glowing with triumph, but as their fingers touched, she glanced sideways and upwards and saw the doubt and agony written on her husband's face. With a little scream, she sprang to him and threw herself into his arms, saying, "Forgive me. I have tried my best, but this is more than I can do. Oh, weak and foolish that I am, I cannot part from you, no, not even to save your life. Surely you do not think that I should have fulfilled this oath and given myself to him in marriage. No, no, it is to death that I should have given myself when you were gone. But I cannot part with you, I cannot part with you, though my selfishness is your doom." "I rejoice to hear it," said the señor. "Listen, you, Tikal. If you are a man, give me a sword and let us settle this matter face to face. So shall one of us at least be rid of his doubts and troubles." "Surely, white man," answered Tikal, "you must be a fool as well as a rogue. Otherwise you would scarcely ask me to risk my life against yours, which is already forfeit to the law. Farewell, Maya. Long have you fooled and tormented me. Tonight I will repay you all." So he went. It might be thought that after Tikal was gone we should have spoken together of what had passed, and of the dangers before us, but this was not so. I think we felt, all of us, that there was nothing more to be said. It is useless to fight against fate, and it is still more useless to be afraid of him, seeing that whatever we do or leave undone, he has his will of us at last. So we sat and chatted on indifferent things, of our life at the mine of Cumarvo, of that night which we spent in the hacienda at Santa Cruz, of the death of our brave companion Molas, and I know not what besides. Presently the child awoke, and its parents occupied themselves with it, finding resemblance to each other in its tiny features, while I walked up and down the hall, counting the lamps, smoking, and wondering where I should be by this time on the morrow. At length the gates opened, for now it was almost the middle of the night, and there came through them Dimas and a guard of priests. The old man bowed before us and said that the time had come to lead us before the council in the sanctuary, but that we were to have no fear, seeing that from all that he had been able to learn, our offence would be leniently dealt with. Maya asked what was to become of the infant, which could not be left alone, and he replied that she must bring it with her, whereon she began to wrap it in a serape. "Your care is needless," said Demas. "There is a secret way to the sanctuary from this place, by which I propose to lead you in order that the child, our Lord, shall not be exposed to the raw cold of the night." Then he took a bunch of keys from his girdle, and handing them to one who accompanied him, a fellow priest and a member of the council, he commanded him to go forward with several of the escort to open the doors and light lamps in the passage that lay between us and the sanctuary. The priest went, and having waited a while, we followed him, to find him standing by the marble wall which separated the passages from the sanctuary. On seeing us approach, he gave the signs, which were answered from within. Next he opened the false door with a silver key, leaving the key and a bunch to which it was attached fixed in the lock for Demas to take us as he passed. This, however, the old priest did not do, for he thought that we should all return by this passage, and as we stepped into the sanctuary, he contented himself with closing the door without locking it. Now, once more we stood within the dim and holy place, there to take our trial for offences committed against the laws of the City of the Heart. There was a full gathering of the council, and Tikal, its high priest and president, sat in his seat behind the altar, but I noted with a thrill of hope that Nahua, his wife, was not by his side, nor was she to be found among the members of the council. We took seats that had been prepared for us in the open space before the altar, Maya being placed in the centre, and the señor and myself on either side of her. Next, the priest of the records rose and announced that the first business before the council was the trial of 3 of its members, namely Maya, Lady of the Heart, her husband, the white man, Son of the Sea, and Ignacio the Wanderer, a lord of the Heart from beyond the mountains, upon the charge of having broken their oaths which they took as members of the council. Having read this formal accusation, the priest set out the case against us clearly but briefly. "On this very night of the festival of the rising of waters a year ago," he began, "you strangers, amongst other things, swore upon the altar, setting in pledge your souls and bodies for the fulfilment of the oath, that without the consent of this high brotherhood you would not attempt to leave the gates of the City of the Heart. Yet but the other day you were overtaken and seized in the act of flying across the mountains to the wilderness beyond. Nor is this all your crime, for with you was that infant, born of the white man and the Lady of the Heart, the heaven-sent child of prophecy, of whom you wickedly sought to rob us and the people. Say now, how do you plead to these charges?" "We plead guilty," answered Maya, "but we ask to be heard in our own defence. Listen, lords. Since that night when we were married by your command, my husband and myself have been dogged by murder, and yonder, as high priest of the Heart and president of your council, he sits who would have murdered us. I see among you this night some of those who waited on me upon the day of our escape, having the Lord Demas at the head of them. What did they tell me? That a plot had been discovered, made by Tikal, my cousin, to murder my husband, my child, and my friend Ignacio the Wanderer. They told me also that Tikal would be deposed because of this and his other crimes, and that the Infinite, my arms, would tonight be anointed /cacique/ of the people of the Heart. Is it not so, Demas?" "It is so, lady," he answered. "And learn that you are not the only ones who are on trial this night. Though your case is taken first, that of Tikal, the high priest, and others will follow. But till then, in virtue of his rank and office, he sits as president of our council." Now Tikal sprang from his seat, but Dimas turned upon him and said sternly, "Keep silent, lord, or speak only to fulfil the duties of your place. Your judging shall be just, but know that there is no hope of escape for you till it is done, seeing that your guards are disarmed and all the paths are watched." Tikal seated himself again, and Maya went on. "On that very night of the coming of the Lord Demas, when I was alone in my chamber, the lady Nahua, the wife of Tikal, crept upon me and strove to murder this my child." Next she set out the story, telling how the señor and I, hearing her cries for help, had entered the chamber, seized and bound Nahua. "Then it was, brethren," she went on, "that sudden terror took us, and we fled, seeking to escape a land where we could not live in safety from one hour to another. This is our sin, and we leave our punishment in your hands. Surely it was better that we should strive to save the child, so that he might live to play his part, whatever that may be, than that he should be kept here and to be butchered by those whom you have raised up to rule you." When Maya had finished her speech, the señor and I addressed the council in turn, confirming all that she had said, and submitting ourselves to the judgment of the Brotherhood. Now we were commanded to fall back, and took our stand beneath the mask of the nameless god, while the council consulted together, and there we awaited our doom. Presently we were brought forward again, and Tikal spoke to us, saying that our sentence was postponed till the charge against Nahua, the daughter of Mattai, and against himself, Tikal, the /cacique and high priest of the City of the Heart, had been considered, adding in a slow and triumphant voice, "Let Nahua, the daughter of Mattai, who waits without, be brought into the presence of the Heart." We heard and gathered up our courage to meet the advancing fate, for we knew that death was on us, and that for us there was no more pity or escape. The door was opened, and Nahua came through it dressed in the robes of her rank, and wearing the green diadem that could be carried only by the wife or mother of the /cacique. "What is your pleasure with me, lords?" she said proudly, after she had made her obeisance to the altar. Then the priest of the records rose and read the charges, namely, that she had attempted with her own hand to do murder upon the body of the infant child of Maya, Lady of the Heart, and her husband, the white man; also that she had aided and abetted Tikal, her husband, in various acts of cruelty and misgovernment that were alleged against him, asking her what she pleaded in answer. "To the last charge, not guilty," she said. "Let Tikal defend his own sins. To the first, guilty. I did attempt to put an end to yonder brat, but Maya discovered me, and I was caught and bound." "Surely, brethren," said Dimas, rising, "we need carry this matter no farther. We have heard the evidence of the Lady Maya and the others, and now Nahua confesses to her crimes. She confesses that she attempted to take the life of him who she knew to be the sacred child, the hope of the people of the Heart. And for such a sin it seems to me that there is but one punishment, though it is terrible, and she who must suffer is the woman and of high rank." "Stay," broke in Nahua, "you have not heard me out, and I have the right to speak before I am condemned to die. You charge me with having attempted to take the life of the sacred child, the hope of the people of the Heart. And had I done this, doubtless I should be worthy of your doom, whereas in truth I am worthy of your praise. Lords of the Heart, this child whom you adore, the heaven-sent child of prophecy, whom tonight you would anoint as your /cacique, deposing Tikal, my husband, and who, as you believe, shall be the star to light our race to greatness and to victory, is a living lie, a fraud, and a bastard." Now a confusion broke out among the council, and angry voices called to her to cease her blasphemies. But she won silence and went on. "Hear me out, I pray you, for even if I wished it, I should not dare to speak thus at random, but I am prepared with proof of every word I utter. You think that I would have killed this child to wring the heart of my rival Maya, and indeed I desire to wring it, and that I would set my own son in its place, and indeed I wish to set him there. Yet these were not my reasons for the deed. Lords of the council, listen to a tale the strangest that ever you have heard, and judge between me and Tikal, my husband, and Maya, my rival, and her friends. Mattai, my father, was known to you all, seeing that at the time of his death, and indeed since Tikal was anointed cacique, he stood next to him in place and power among the people of the heart, holding those offices in the brotherhood which now are filled by Dimas, and among them that of keeper of the sanctuary. Yet, lords, Mattai, my father, was no true man. Alas, that I should have to say it, seeing that it was more for my sake that he sinned than for his own, since he loved me and desired my welfare above everything on earth. It was this love of his that ruined him, making him false to his God, to his oaths, and to his country. Thus, in the beginning, he knew that since I was a child, I had set my heart upon the Lord Tikal, who was affianced to the Lady Maya, also that I was ambitious and yearned to be great. Therefore it was that he deceived Tikal, pretending that it had been revealed to him by heaven that the Lady Maya and her father were dead in the wilderness. Therefore it was also that when he had persuaded him that she was lost to him for ever, he pressed it upon the Lord Tikal that he should marry me in place of Maya, his affianced, who was dead, promising him in return that he would bring it about that he should be anointed cacique of the people of the heart. All these things and others he did, though at the time I knew nothing of them, and thought in my folly that Tikal married me because he loved me and sought me as the companion of his life and power. Then Zibalbay returned on the night of our marriage feast, and with him came Maya and the strangers, and from that hour my husband began to hate me, because I was his wife in place of Maya, whom he loved. More, as I have learned since, he went to Zibalbay while he lay in prison and offered to resign his place as cacique in his favours for so long as he should live, and no more to oppose his schemes if he would give him Maya in marriage, after I had been put away either by death or by divorce. This Zibalbay would have done, and gladly. But as it chanced, Maya here had set her heart upon the white man during their journeyings together through the wilderness, and refused to be separated from him, that she might be palmed off in marriage upon Tikal. Yet he might have won his way, for their case was desperate, and the alternative was death, had not Mattai, my father, found a plan whereby they could be saved, and I remain the wife of the cacique. This was the plan, lords, that a prophecy should be set in the symbol of the heart yonder, such as would deceive the council of the heart, and bring it about that Maya should be given in marriage to the white man whom she lived. Lords, this was done. At the dead of night they crept to the sanctuary, and, opening the heart, they placed within it that tablet that foreshadowed the birth of a deliverer. The rest you know. "It is false," cried many voices. "Such sacrilege is not possible. "It is not false," answered Nahua, "and I will prove to you that the sacrilege was possible. The heart was opened, and the false prophecy forged by my father was placed within it, where it was found by you on the night of the festival of the rising of waters, this day a year ago. But when the holy heart was opened, behold, it was not empty, for in it lay another prophecy, a true prophecy, which was removed from it, that the lie which has deceived you might be set in its place." "Where then is that writing?" asked Demas. "Here," she answered, drawing the tablet from her breast. "Listen." And she read: "The eye that has slept and is awakened sees the heart and purpose of the wicked. I say that in the hour of the desolation of my city, not all the waters of the holy lake shall wash away their sin. Take it, lords, and see for yourselves," she continued, laying the tablet on the altar. "Now listen again, and learn how it chanced that this relic came into my keeping. After he had wrought this great sin, the curse of the nameless god fell upon my father, and, as you know, he was smitten with a sore disease. Then it came about that when he lay dying, remorse took him, and he wrote a certain paper, which he caused to be witnessed and given to me, together with this tablet. In my hand I hold that paper, lords. Hear it, and judge for yourselves whether I have spoken truth or falsehood." And she read aloud the confession of Mattai, that set out every detail of our plot and the manner of its execution. "Now, lords," she added, when the reading was finished and the signatures had been examined, "you will understand how it happened that in my rage at these tidings I strove to kill yonder infant, who has been palmed off upon you as the seed of the god, and I leave it to you to deal with those who planned that fraud." End of chapter 24. Heart of the World by H. Rider Haggard. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 25. Farewell. Nahua ceased and sat down, and so great was the astonishment, or rather the awe, of the council at the tale that she had told, that for a while none of them spoke. At length Demas rose and said: "Maya, Lady of the Heart, and you strangers, you have heard the awful charge that is brought against you. What do you say in answer to it?" "We say that it is true," answered Maya calmly. "We were forced to choose between the loss of our lives and the doing of this deed, and we chose to live. It was Mattai who hatched the fraud and executed the forgery, and now it seems that we must suffer for his sin as well as for our own. One word more. Ignacio here did not enter into this plot willingly, but was forced into it by my husband and myself, and chiefly by myself." Demas made no answer, but at a sign the two priests who guarded the altar with drawn swords came forward and drove us into the passage that led from the sanctuary to the hall of the dead, where they shut us in between the double doors, leaving us in darkness. Here, as all was finished, I knelt down to offer my last prayers to heaven, while Maya wept in her husband's arm, taking farewell of him and of her child, which wailed upon her breast. "Truly," he said, "you were wise, wife, when you urged us not to enter this country of the heart. Still, What is done cannot be undone, and having been happy together for a little space, let us die together as bravely as we may, hoping that still together we may awake presently in some new world of peace." While he spoke, the door was open, and the priests, with drawn swords, led us back into the sanctuary. As Maya crossed the threshold, first of the three of us, she was met by Tikal, who, with a sudden movement, but without roughness, took the child from her arms. Now we saw what was prepared for us, for the stone in front of the altar had been lifted, and at our feet yawned the black shaft from which ascended the sound of waters. They placed us with our backs resting against the altar, but Tikal stood in front, and between him and us lay the mouth of the pit. "Maya, daughter of Zibalbay, and Kachike, lady of the heart, White Man, son of the sea, Ignacio the wanderer, and Mattai the priest, whom, being dead in the body, we summon in the spirit," began Dimas in a cold and terrible voice. "You, by your own confession, are proved guilty of the greatest crimes that can be dreamed of in the wicked brain of man, and executed by his impious hands. You have broken your solemn oaths, taken in the presence of heaven and your brethren. You have offered insult to the God we worship, and violated his sanctuary, and you have palmed off as their God-sent prince upon the people who trusted you, a bastard and a child of sin. For all these and other crimes which you have committed, why we know not, it is not in our power to mete out to you a just reward. That must be measured to you elsewhere, when you have passed our judgment seat, and your names are long forgotten upon the earth. This is the sentence of the Council of the Heart, that your name, Mattai, be erased from the list of the officers of the Heart, that your memory be proclaimed accursed, that your dwelling place be burned with fire, and the site of it strewn with salt, that your corpse be torn from its grave and laid upon the summit of the pyramid till the birds of the air devour it, and that your soul be handed over to the tormentors of the lower world to deal with according to their pleasure for ever and aye. This is the sentence of the Council of the Heart upon you, Maya, daughter of Zibalbay, the Kachike, lady of the heart, White Man, son of the sea, and Ignacio the wanderer, that your names be erased from the roll of the brethren of the heart, and proclaimed accursed in the streets of the city, that you be gagged, bound hand and foot, and chained living to the walls of the sanctuary, and there left before the altar of the god which you have violated, till death from thirst and hunger shall overtake you, that your corpses be laid upon the pyramid as the prey to the birds of the air, and that your souls be handed over to the tormentors of the underworld to deal with according to their pleasure, for ever and for aye. It is spoken. Let the sentence of the council be done, but first, since this bastard babe is too young to sin and suffer punishment, let him be handed into the keeping of the god, that the god may deal with him according to his pleasure." As the words passed his lips, and before we fully understood them, dazed as we were with the terror of our awful doom, Tikal stepped forward, and even now I shudder when I write of it, holding the poor infant, which at this instant began to wail again as though with pain or fear, over the mouth of the pit. Suddenly he let it fall into the depths beneath. The shriek of the agonized mother ran round the walls of the holy place, and before it had died away, the señor had leaped forward, leaped like a puma across the gulf of the open well, and gripped Tikal by the throat and waist. He gripped him, and rage giving him strength, he lifted him high above his head and hurled him down the dreadful place whither the child had gone before. With a hoarse scream, Tikal vanished, and for a moment there was silence. It was broken by the voice of Maya crying aloud in accents of madness and despair: "Not all the waters of the holy lake shall wash away our sin, yet may they serve to avenge us upon you, O you murderers of a helpless child." As she spoke, followed by the señor and myself, who, I think, alone of all the company guessed her dreadful purpose, Maya ran round the altar, and with both her hands grasped the symbol of the heart which lay upon it. "Forbear!" cried the voice of Dimas, but she did not heed him. Before he or any of us could reach her, dragging at it with desperate strength, she tore the ancient symbol from its bed, and with a loud and mocking laugh had cast it down upon the marble floor, where it shattered into fragments. For 1 second all was still. Then from the altar there came a sudden twang, as of harp strings breaking, that was followed instantly by another and more awful sound, the sound of the roar of many waters. "Fly, fly!" cried a voice. "The floods are loosed, and destruction is upon us and upon the people of the Heart." Now the council rushed, one and all, towards the door of the sanctuary, but I, Ignatio, by the grace of Heaven, remembered the other door, the secret door through which we had entered, that the priest had left ajar. "This way," I cried in Spanish to the señor, and seizing Maya by the arm, I dragged her with me into the passage. When all three of us were through, I turned to close the door, and as I did so I saw an awful sight. Out of the mouth of the pit, before the altar, sprang a vast column of water, which struck the roof of the sanctuary with such fearful force that already the massive marble blocks began to rain down upon the crowd of fugitives who struggled, and in vain, to open the door and escape into the Hall of the Dead. One other thing I saw: it was the corpse of Tikal, vomited from the depth into which the señor had hurled him, a shapeless mass ascending and descending with the column of water as alternately it struck and rebounded from the roof. Then, before the flood could reach it, I closed the door, and possessing myself of the bunch of keys that still hung in the lock, we fled up the passages and stairs till we came to the hall where we had been imprisoned. Here, however, we dared not stay, for already strange gurgling sounds struck upon our ears, and we felt the mighty fabric of the pyramid shake and quiver beneath the blows of the imprisoned waters as they burst their way upward and outward. Seizing lamps, we ran to the copper gates at the head of the hall, and not without trouble found the key that opened them. We had no time to spare, for as we left it, the water rushed in at the further end of the chamber, a solid wave that in some few seconds filled it to the depth of 6 or 8 feet. On we fled before the advancing flood, and well it was for us that our course lay upwards, for otherwise we must have been drowned as we searched for the keys to open the different gates and doors. But now fortune, which for so long had been our foe, befriended us, and the end of it was that we reached the summit of the pyramid just as the dawn began to break. The dawn was breaking, and seldom perhaps has the light of day revealed a more wonderful or terrible sight to the eyes of man. Outside the gates of the courtyard of the pyramid were gathered a great multitude of people, waiting to be admitted to celebrate the feast that on this day of the year was to be held according to the custom upon the summit of the pyramid. Indeed, they should have already been assembled there, but it was the rule that the gates could not be opened until the council had left the sanctuary, and this night the council was late. As we looked at them, a cry of fear and wonder rose from the multitude, and this was the cause of it. Along that street which ran from the landing place to the great square rushed a vast foam-topped wall of water, 20 feet or more in depth by 100 broad. Now we learned the truth. The symbol on the altar, I know not how, was connected with the secret and subterranean sluice gates which for many generations had protected the City of the Heart from flood. When it was torn from its bed, these sluice gates fell, and the waters rushing in sought their natural level, which at this season of the year was higher than the housetops of the city. On the summit of the pyramid were 2 priests who tended the sacred fire and made ready for the service to be celebrated. Seeing us emerge from the watch house, they ran towards us, wringing their hands and asking what dreadful thing had come to pass. I replied that we did not know, but that seeing the water gather in our prison, we had fled from it. How we had fled they never stopped to ask, but ran down the stairway of the pyramid, only to return again presently, for before they reached its base their escape was cut off. Meanwhile the terror thickened, and the doom began. Everywhere the waters spread and gathered, replenished from the inexhaustible reservoir of the vast lake. Whole streets went down before them to vanish suddenly beneath their foaming face, while from the crowd below rose one continuous shriek of agony. Maya heard it, and casting herself face downwards upon the surface of the pyramid, that she might not see her handiwork, she thrust her fingers into her ears to stop them, while the señor and I watched fascinated. Now the flood struck the people, some thousands of them, who were gathered on the rising ground at the gates of the enclosure of the temple, and lo, in an instant they were gone, borne away as withered leaves are borne before a gale. Ere a man might count 10, the most of the population of the City of the Heart had perished. For a little while some of the more massive houses stood, only to vanish one by one in silence, as it seemed, for now the roar of the advancing waters mastered all other sounds. Before the sun was well up it was finished, and of that ancient and beautiful city, Heart of the World, there remained nothing to be seen except the tops of trees and the upper parts of the pyramids of worship rising above the level of the lake. The golden city was no more. It was gone, and with it all its hoarded treasures, its learning, and its ancient faith, and that which for many generations had been held to be a myth had now become a myth indeed. One short hour had sufficed to sweep out the existence, the ripe fruit of the labour of centuries, and with it the dwindling remnant of the last pure race of Indians who followed the customs and the creeds of my forefathers. Doubtless their day was done, and the power above us had decreed their fall. Still, so vast and sudden a ruin was a thing awful to behold, or even to think upon. What I wondered, would the founders of this great city and the fashioners of its solemn pyramids and sanctuary have thought and felt, could they have foreseen the manner of its end? Would they have set the holy symbol so cunningly upon the altar that the strength of a maddened woman, by tearing it away, could bury altar, temple, town, and all who lived therein for ever beneath the surface of the lake? This they did to protect their homes and fanes against the foe, so that, if need were, they could prefer destruction to dishonour. But they did not foresee, indeed they never dreamed, that this foe might be of their own race, and that the hand of one of her children would bring disaster utter and irredeemable upon the proud head of their holy stronghold, the city heart of the world. Now, foot by foot, the waters found their level, filling up the cup in which the town had stood, and the bright sunlight shone upon their placid surface as they rippled round the sides of the pyramid and over the flat roofs of the submerged houses. Here and there floated a mass of wreckage, and here and there a human corpse, over which already the water eagles began to gather. That was all. Presently Maya rose to her knees and looked out from beneath the hollow of her hand, for the light was dazzling there upon the white summit of the pyramid. Then she flung her arms above her head and uttered a great and bitter cry. "Behold my handiwork," she cried, "and the harvest of my sin. Oh, my father, that dream which you sent to haunt my sleep was dreadful, but it did not touch the truth. Oh, my father, the people whom you would have saved are dead. Lost is the city that you loved, and it is I who have destroyed them. Oh, my father, your curse has found me out indeed, and I am accursed." Some such words as these she spoke, then began to laugh, and turning to the señor, she said, "Where is the child, husband?" He could not answer her, but she took no note of it, only she bent her arms, rocking them and crooning as though the infant lay upon her breast. Then came first to him and next to me, saying, "Look, is he not a pretty boy? Am I not happy to be the mother of such a boy?" I made pretence to look, but the sight of her pitiful face and of the empty arms as she swayed them was so dreadful that I was forced to turn away and hide my tears, for now I saw the truth. Weariness, sorrow, and shock had turned her brain. She was mad. We led her to the watch house where there was shelter, and the priests who had returned gave us food so soon as we could make them understand that we needed it, for they too were almost mad. Here her last illness seized the Lady Maya. It began with a hardening of the breast, which changed presently to fever. 2 days and nights, with breaking hearts, we nursed her there upon the pyramid, striving not to listen to her sick ravings and piteous talk about the child, and at dawn upon the 3rd day she died. Before she died, her senses returned to her, and she spoke to her husband beautiful and tender words, which seem almost too holy to set down. "Alas," she ended, "as my heart foretold me, I have brought you nothing but evil, and now the time has come for me to go away from you. Ignatio was right, and we were wrong, or rather I was wrong. We should have died together a year ago, if that was needful, sooner than to commit the sin we worked in the sanctuary, for then at least our hands would have been clean, nor would the blood of the people have rested on my head. Yet, believe me, husband, that when I did the deed of death I was mad, for I had seen our child murdered before my eyes, and I heard a voice within me bidding me to be avenged. Well, it is done, and I have suffered for it, and perhaps shall suffer more. Yet I think that I was but the hand or the instrument of fate, predestined to bring destruction upon a race already doomed, and on a faith outworn. That faith I no longer believe in, for you have taught me another worship. Therefore I do not fear the vengeance of the God of my people. May my other sins find forgiveness, if they are sins, for it was love of you that led me to them. Husband, I trust that you may escape from this ill-omened place and live on for many years in happiness. But most of all, I trust that in the land which you will reach at last, you may find us waiting for you, the child and I together. Farewell to you. This is a sad parting, and my life has been short and sorrowful. Yet I am glad to have lived it, since it brought me to your arms, and however little I may have deserved it, I think that you loved me truly, and will love my memory even when I am dead. To you also, Ignacio, farewell. You have been a true friend to me, though I brought you no luck, and at times I was jealous of you. Think kindly of me if you can, as in the old days before we met. Comfort my husband with your friendship, though had it not been for me you might have attained your ends." Then once more she turned to the señor, and in a gasping and broken voice prayed of him not to forget her or her child. I heard him answer that this she need not fear, as his happiness died with her, and even if he should escape, he thought that they would not be parted for very long, nor could any other woman take her place within his heart. She blessed him and thanked him, caressing his face with her dying hands, and, unable to bear more of such a sight, I left them together. An hour later the señor came from the watch house, and though he did not speak, one glance at him was enough to tell me that all was over. So died Maya, Lady of the Heart, the last of the ancient royal blood of the Indian princes. Myself alone excepted, a very sweet and beautiful woman, though at times headstrong, passionate, and capricious. Now, while Maya lay dying, we learned that some Indians still lived on the mainland, men and women who had been sent there to tend the crops, for we saw a canoe hovering round what once had been the island of the Heart. The two priests who were with us on the pyramid tried to signal to it to come to our rescue, but either those in the boat did not see us, or they were terror-stricken and feared to approach the pyramid. Still, we kept the body all that day, hoping that help might reach us so that we could take it ashore for burial. Towards night, however, when none came, we made another plan. On the roof of the watch house the sacred fire still burned, for the two priests had tended it, more from custom, I think, than for any other reason. Hither we brought some of the gilded stools that were used by the nobles of the Heart on days of festival, and all the fuel that had been stored to replenish the fire, building the whole into a funeral pyre around and above the brazier. Then, as it caught, we carried out the body of Maya, wrapped in her white robes, and laid it upon the pyre and left it. Presently the great pile was alight and burning so fiercely that it lit up the whole summit of the pyramid and the darkness which surrounded it. All that night we watched it, while the two priests lamented and beat their breasts after their fashion, till at length it flared itself away, and the holy fire that had burned for more than 1,000 years died down and was extinguished. It seemed very fitting that the final office of this ancient and consecrated flame should be to consume the body of the last of the royal race who had tended it for so many generations. Towards dawn a wind sprang up with drizzling rain, and when we approached the place at daybreak, it was to find it cold and blackened. No spark remained alight, and no ash or fragment could be seen of her who was once the beautiful and gracious Lady of the Heart. Now we set ourselves sadly enough to find a means of escape to the mainland, which indeed it was time to do, for the waters working in the centre were sapping the foundations of the great pyramid, portions of which had already fallen away. Our plan was to form a raft by lashing together some benches that were at hand, and on it to float or paddle ourselves to the shore. This, however, we were spared the pains of doing, for when our task was half completed, we saw a large canoe manned by 3 Indians advancing toward us, and signalled to them to paddle round to the steps of the pyramid. They did so, and taking with us all the food and such few articles of value as were to be found in the watch house, the 4 of us embarked, though not without difficulty, for the current ran so strongly round the crumbling angles of the pyramid that it was hard to bring the canoe up to the stairs. From the Indians we learned that those on shore were so overwhelmed with horror at the catastrophe which had fallen upon their holy city that they did not dare to approach the place where it had stood. But when, on the previous night, they saw the great flame of Maya's funeral pyre, they knew that men still lived upon the pyramid, who, as they thought, were signalling to them for help, and ventured out to save them. They asked us how it came about that the waters had overwhelmed the city, which had stood among them safely from the beginning of time. We replied that we did not know, and the priests with us, now that they had escaped with their lives, seemed too prostrated to tell our deliverers that we had been imprisoned in the hollow of the pyramid, even if they knew that this was so. On reaching the shore, we found a little gathering of awe-stricken Indians. Perhaps there may have been 150 of them, the sole survivors of the people of the Heart, unless indeed a few still lived on the high land of those portions of the island of the Heart that as yet had not been submerged. Open-mouthed and almost without comment, they listened to the terrible tale of the sudden and utter destruction of their city. When it was done, one among them suggested that the white man should be killed, as without doubt he had brought misfortune and vengeance of heaven upon their race, but this proposal seemed to find no favour with the rest of them. Indeed, had they known the part which we played in the disaster, I doubt if they would have found the spirit to make an end of us. On the other hand, they gave us what food and clothing we required, and even weapons such as machetes, bows and arrows, and blowpipes, and left us to go our way. Often I have wondered what became of them, and if any of their number or of their children still survive. So we turned our faces to the mountains, and on the 2nd day we crossed them safely, for Maya had told us the secret of the passage through the rocks, which under her guidance we had passed blindfolded. Thus at length, having looked our last upon the blue waters of the holy lake, sparkling in the sunshine, above the palaces of the city and the bones of its inhabitants, did we leave that accursed country of the Heart, where so much loss and evil had befallen us. End of chapter 25. Heart of the World by H. Rider Haggard. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Envoi. My friend, now I, Ignacio, have finished writing that story of how I came to visit the golden city of the Indians, which so many have believed to be fabulous, and that today exists no more. It is a strange story, and I trust that it may interest you to read it when I am dead and buried. Perhaps you would like to know the details of our homeward journey, but in truth I have neither the strength nor the patience to set them down. It was a terrible journey, and once we both of us fell ill with fever from which I thought that we should not recover. But recover we did by the help of some wandering Indians who nursed us, and at length reached this place from which we had fled for our lives nearly 2 years before. We found the hacienda deserted, for it had the reputation of being haunted, though some of the Indian dependents, or rather slaves, of that great villain, Don Pedro Moreno, still worked patches of the land. Well, the señor took a fancy to stay in the place, for it was here they had first seen his wife. So we sold that girdle of emeralds which Maya took from the chest of ornaments and gave to me when we were imprisoned for the first time in the hall of the pyramid. Do not lose the clasp, friend, for it is the only remaining relic of the people of the heart. And with the proceeds we bought at a cheap rate from the government of the day, who had entered into possession of them, this house and the wide lands round it that I have cultivated ever since. For, my friend, now my ambitions were finished. I had played my last card, and it had failed me, and, albeit with a sorrowful mind, I abandoned my hopes for the regeneration of the Indians, which I had no longer the means or the health and vigour to attempt. Also, I was no more Lord of the Heart, for with its counterpart it was lost in the sanctuary yonder beneath the waters of the holy lake, and with the ancient symbol went much of my power. For 5 years the señor and I lived here together, but I think that during all this time he was dying. He who used to be so strong in body and merry in mind never regained his health or spirits from that hour when Maya passed upon the pyramid, and though he seldom spoke of her, I know that night and day she was always present in his thoughts. Twice in the spring seasons he suffered from calenturas, as we call the fever of the country, which left him sallow in face and shrunken in body. When the spring came round for the 3rd time, I begged him to go to Mexico for change, returning to the hacienda in the summer. In vain. He would not do it. Indeed, I do not think that he cared whether he lived or died. So the end of it was that the calentura took him again, and die he did in my arms, happily as a child that falls asleep. Now my days are accomplished also, and having failed in all things and known much sorrow and disappointment, I go to join him. My friend, farewell. Perhaps you will think of me from time to time, and though you are a heretic, send up a prayer to heaven for the welfare of the soul of the old Indian. Ignacio. The End. Heart of the World by H. Rider Haggard, read by Paul Hansen.